Don't let it happen again.
You can dock my pay.
Good evening. Time being 7 o'clock, I call the August 16th, 2023 meeting of the Franklin Town Council to order. Please pause for a moment of silence. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Announcements from the chair. All citizens are now welcome to attend public board and committee meetings in person. Meetings are live streamed by Franklin TV and shown on Comcast Channel 11 and Verizon Channel 29. In an effort to maximize citizen engagement opportunities, citizens will be able to continue to participate remotely via phone, or you may click the Zoom link that is on the posted agenda and on the town's website. The call-in number is 929-205-6099 and enter the meeting ID, which is 856-7246-7539. Then you need to hit the pound sign. Once again, the meeting ID, 856-7246-7539 pound. If residents are just interested in watching the meeting, it will also be live streamed by Franklin TV. Another announcement from the chair, Councilor Jones is traveling this week, so he will not be here. Councilor Hamblin will act as clerk for this evening's meeting. Whew. This is going to be fun. Citizens' comments. Citizens are welcome to express their views for up to 3 minutes on a matter that is not on the agenda. The council will not engage in a dialogue or comment on a matter raised during citizens' comments. The town council will give remarks appropriate consideration and may ask the town administrator to review the matter. Is there anyone in council chambers who would like to speak on an item not on tonight's agenda? Please come forward and just name and address, please. Yeah, that one's fine.
Jane Calloway Tripp, and I'm at 607 Maple Street in Franklin. I came in front of this council in 2018, and I complained about the street drains and the culvert on Maple Street that had not been maintained for close to 10 years on the culvert, 7 years on the drain. Got it taken care of and it was cleared. I've had no flooding issues at all till recently. My entire basement was flooded because the drains could not take the water and the culvert is overgrown. Right now I have 20 fans drying my downstairs. My floors had to be ripped up and will have to be replaced. I have lost furniture, shoes, clothes, thousands of dollars worth of stuff, including electrical equipment. Some things I can't get back because they belong to my mom. I am more than angry because if in 2018 I was told there is a maintenance program for the culverts and the drains, 5 years later, and they have not been done. So either I was lied to or it just wasn't important enough to take care of. Two neighbors down the street from me weren't even home. 2 feet of water in their basement. This is not okay. I lost a van when a tree fell on my van and totaled it. I asked the town to take the tree down. Wouldn't do it, just pruned it. Okay, fine. Tree landed on my husband's car, damaged that. Have to fix that now. Now, whatever my insurance doesn't cover for this, is out-of-pocket expenses. I am done spending money that I don't have to fix, repair, and replace the things that shouldn't be getting damaged if the things in the town are maintained. I don't care if there are flowers downtown. I don't care if we have bike paths. I don't care if the zoning laws are changed or not. None of that matters. What matters is the existing things that are in place to make sure that the people who pay taxes in this town can live comfortably are being neglected. As far as I am concerned, whatever my insurance does not cover, I do expect to be reimbursed by the town. Because had you done the drains and the culvert, and I have pictures of the culvert that I actually took tonight on my way here, which I will be glad to show you, I would not have flooded. The reason I flooded is because the water was pouring in at such a fast rate under my garage that even my sump pump couldn't handle it. If that culvert is cleared and those drains are cleared, I would not flood from the street. So I'm back. And unfortunately, I'm being brought back for the same reason that I started out in the first place, because I flooded, and I'm not happy about it. I want those drains and I want that culvert cleaned. With the amount of rain that we're getting, you can't just wait. And I'm not the only one on Maple Street. As far as everybody else in town who's been flooding, and I know a lot of people did, I don't know their personal reasons as to what caused their flood. Maybe it has to do with the town drains, maybe it doesn't. But my specific reason, my neighbor's specific reason, it is that drain and that culvert. Those are imperative. I can't keep replacing and damaging all of my belongings. It's not fair. I pay enough in taxes and fees in this town. I shouldn't have to redo my whole bottom level. And it's a mess. If you would like to come to my house and see the disaster I've been left with, not to mention the dumpster now that I have to get because I've had to throw everything out. Anything that touched that water has to be tossed. One pair of my shoes I tried to save. 24 hours later, the amount of bacteria and spores that were growing on it, nothing that touched that water is salvageable because it's bacteria filled. So for my family's safety, all of it has to go, to include the furniture downstairs. And none of you would expect to have to live that way either. So I would like this addressed and I would like it taken care of like yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Is there anyone else in council chambers that would like to speak on an item not on tonight's agenda? Please.
Good evening, Nancy Danello,
Oh, that's who you are.
town clerk. Elections. Okay, biennial town election, November 7th. You're going to get sick of seeing me. I know, I apologize,
Never.
but thank
Never.
you, thank you. So just some important dates. Nomination papers are now available. And a lot of you have, most of you here have come and pulled your papers. I was gonna go over the list of everybody who's pulled papers, but it is on my website. I will go over the boards and committees that we still have, that we don't have a full slate for. Okay, so Board of Health, it's a vote for 2. I only have 1, so there's 1 more seat available. Constables, vote for 3, and I only have 2, so again, there's 1 seat available. School committee, vote for 7, and I only have 6, so there's 1 seat available. So come and see me, pull your nomination papers. I will walk you through the process, and any questions, I will be more than happy to answer. So with the changes in the spreadsheet and people pulling papers and people returning their papers, I do update the website on a daily basis. So if you're interested in seeing who's returned their nomination papers, who is withdrawn, just log into franklinma.gov and go into the town clerk's page. And I also update Steve Sherlock and Alan Earls on a, daily basis. And Lily also updates the social media page as well. So any questions, please reach out to me. And come and see me, pull those papers, please. If no one pulls papers, we have write-ins, we'll have to go down the list and approach people who have been written in. So come see me, and that's it. Do you have any questions for me? I know, no? Okay. I have no information.
Can't do it during citizens'
Oh, that's
comments.
right, I'm sorry. I have no information on the Tri-County yet on the election for that. All I know is the date and the time. As soon as I get any information on that, I will update the citizens as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nancy. Is there any, please come forward.
Good evening. I'm Ken Elmore. I am at 29 School Street. I also have had the wonderful pleasure of serving as the president of Dean College over the course of the last year. I was here a year ago, and I hope that what I can do is to come back and give an update about the last year at Dean, in particular how we have been stewards, I think, of the public trust, how we've been financial drivers in Franklin, and what's more, how we've been trying to work with community organizations and agencies. I'd love to give you an update and make the request that I be able to do that at the next council meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken. Is there anyone else in council chambers that would like to speak on an item not on tonight's agenda? Is there anyone out there in Zoom land that would like to speak on an item not on tonight's agenda? I don't see any hands. Do you, Jamie?
Nope.
You don't see any.
No.
Okay, moving on. Approval of minutes, we have none this evening. Proclamations and recognitions, none this evening. The next item is appointments. We have one to the Agricultural Commission, Daniel Morse, and I'd like the clerk to read the appointment.
I'd be honored to, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Appointments to the Agricultural Commission, Daniel Morse, 15 Spring Street, Franklin, Mass. 02038. The Town Administrator has recommended the appointment of Daniel Morse to serve as the member of the Agricultural Commission with a term to expire on June 30th, 2026. Motion to ratify the appointment by the Town Administrator of Daniel Morse to serve as a member of the Agricultural Commission.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion, Jamie.
Just, Dan's been doing a great job. I think Councilor Hamlin knows that well. He's been an associate, I think, for 2 years now, so he's moving from an associate role into an at-large role.
Thank you, Jamie. Any questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, the vote will come on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mine's 8-0, right?
8-0. Thank you. Okay, public hearings. We have 2 this evening, and let's open the first public hearing on zoning bylaw amendment 23-898, a zoning bylaw to amend the Franklin Town Code at Chapter 185, Attachment 9, Schedule of Lot, Area, Frontage, Yard, and Height Requirements. Jamie, you want to?
Sure. I'm just going to ask Brian to come on up here as well, but really quickly, Mr. Chairman, so this is a bylaw amendment that is exclusive to General Residential 5 zoning district. Just for the public's edification, that's the areas around the downtown commercial, on some areas on Dean Ave, Ruggles, a sliver of Milliken, a little portion down Cottage Street. So really around your downtown commercial area, there's an area around it called General Residential 5. I'm going to do absolutely the best I can to keep it as simple and understandable as possible. The next one, Councilor Chandler, we've got the map with the in and out. It's a little easier. Brian's going to walk through really quickly. This does not propose to change any zoning lines, okay, just so that everybody understands. And it's just simply exclusive to some of the regulatory issues that that was just read by Councilor Hamlin. And afterwards, I just want to mention that this did go through the EDC, and I'm sure Councilor Hamlin will also dig in a little deeper. The proposal that's before you tonight is actually the proposal that was unanimously endorsed by the Economic Development Subcommittee. The Planning Board had returned a recommendation to all of you with just a small reduction in the percentages of impervious surface. And so the decision before the council tonight is to go back to the Planning Board recommendation or stand with the Economic Development Subcommittee recommendation. Brian's going to go through the numbers very quickly. There's a chart in the memo which clearly explains the percentages and where they're going. And this mainly has to do with coverage of a lot, okay? Just the coverage of impervious surface, either via a structure and/or paving. It just simply deals with the ratios of how much can be covered on a lot, okay? So I hope I framed that as narrow as possible so that people can just focus in, so it's not other things. It's just very, very small changes to these percentages. Brian?
Well, you just covered it all, Jamie.
Let's vote.
It's a hearing.
Let's show on the road.
Thank you, through the chair. What's being proposed is two very small changes in our regulations for, in both of them are in attachment 9, which is a schedule of lot area, frontage, yard, and height requirements in the zoning bylaw. As Town Administrator mentioned, we are proposing to increase the amount of impervious area allowed on a lot. So if there's a development about to happen, right now, they can cover 30% of a lot with their structure, an additional 5% can be paving and things. So you have a total of 35%. We were proposing, where did we end up? Because it was, went back and forth a little bit.
So
but
45%.
I think right now we're at 45%. So we're proposing an additional 5% on the structures and going an additional 10% on the paving. So it'd be up to 45% total. So that's almost half of the lot can be impervious surface. The remainder has to be impervious where the water goes through. So that includes all your roofs, any walkways, pavement, anything of that nature that's impervious. It maxes out at, with the changes that were proposed at 45%. The other change that takes place is actually, we're proposing is in the notes at the bottom, we are proposing a change to note 7. Permitted residential uses must observe requirements of general residential 5 district for residential use building only. There are mixed-use buildings that right now are currently exempt from that. We're proposing that multifamily residential with 3 family units and mixed-use buildings are exempt. So we're, instead of putting very strict requirements on a 3-family, which is something we added into the use definitions not that long ago, we're proposing that that's exempt from it. It's a very small change, and I don't see it, if anything, it's going to increase the three-family, 3-unit housing in the general residential 5 area. I'd be happy to take any questions you have. It's been to the planning board for their public hearing, and I believe I don't think we've had any major concerns other than the debate a little bit about what percentage impervious should be.
Thank you, Brian. Questions from the council? Councilor Hamblin?
You want me to go?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through the chair. I'd like to thank Brian and the staff for all the work on this. You know, we come up with all these different changes, and they might be small changes, but they take a lot of time to think through and to go through. And I think the wording of number 7, the note in number 7, the number 7 note, and the attachment number 9 is perfect. This is what the planning board all agreed on as well. We all agreed that that was great. But I just want to remind people again why we're doing this and why we're doing all these zoning changes, right? So it's to allow for incremental changes in density, to increase housing stock, to allow for a feasible development that would fit to what people want to see, what we learned through the Franklin for All project. And we do that without increasing infrastructure and the cost to the town. So that's our goal, right? To create a vibrant downtown full of people shopping and eating, where they feel safe and comfortable, to meet and maybe even exceed MBTA community requirements. And why downtown? Everybody says, well, why is it always downtown? It's like, because downtown holds the greatest potential for new growth and to boost our local receipts. We did have a disagreement about the percentage of maximum impervious coverage, and I think the proposal that went to the EDC, from the EDC to the town council recently, then to the planning board, is actually 55% maximum impervious coverage. And we picked that because it goes along with what the MAPC recommended for this zone. So my worry is that if we have 18 units per acre by right and a 45% maximum impervious coverage, we might get taller buildings, and that's not what people want to see. They want to see them a little bit wider and shorter. So I still haven't heard a good argument against why we shouldn't cover the MAPC or use that recommendation. It's at least 50%, and maybe Brian can answer, like, is it okay why can't we follow what the MAPC has said to us to do?
There's, it's just a matter of mathematics, and if you figure out how many units are allowed and approximately what size and things, I realize that whether you go 45 or 50% or 55 is not a big deal. So I'm not here to fight about any specific, we needed to increase the percentage without a doubt. One of the things that we require with our zoning is parking spaces for each apartment or housing unit. And if you don't increase it from the existing 35%, you're not going to get enough parking spaces to cover all the housing units,
Right.
unless
Right.
you do go up.
Right.
You know, I mean, unless they're much bigger housing units and whatever the case may be. So we do need to increase it. So I don't have an objection to changing to a maximum of 50% or whatever the council comes up with. I think it's a matter of policy at the council level at this point. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Well
Mr.
said.
Chairman. Yep.
Any other, Counselor Chandler?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Before I start my comments, I'm not asking the EDC any questions, so I don't want to lose my time. It looks like, obviously, our council subcommittee voted unanimously for the 45, 55, and the planning board voted unanimously to put it down to 35, 45. And I was happy to hear you say that you weren't going to fight about it either way, because it seems like everything that this council sends to the planning board, they come back with their own idea. And I just see how hard our subcommittee works on this. So I'm inclined to agree with our subcommittee, because we voted unanimously to send it that way. And I see nothing wrong with the 45, 55. And you just said that yourself, Brian. So, let me see what else we have here. And even, I just heard that higher number could even help with the housing stock. So there's some arguments to be made here. And I think a lot of people at home just heard something, they'd like an answer to this. How many floors can a building be in Franklin right now, Mr. Tamaro?
In most districts,
Yeah.
without getting a special permit, you can get 3 floors. But 3 floors. So if you had housing in general residential 5, for instance, where we're talking about here, they can have 3 floors by right. If they, and which is what we want to keep it to. We don't want to keep going that additional level in a residential area, but they can seek a special permit for the additional 4th floor.
Okay, so all that is by special permit, all the 4 and the 5s.
Yeah.
Like,
for
say
the
EMC
4s,
building
yeah.
was a special permit.
When it was built, I assume it was, but it would definitely would be today, yes.
Okay, and in closing, I would hope that maybe people on the committee from our board here would stick to the guns a little and say this is what we want. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Chandler. Any other questions or comments from the council? Anyone in council chambers? Please, just come forward, name and address, please.
My name is Maxwell Marangelo. I live at 127 Central Park Terrace. I'm short, I apologize. In general, I'm in support of multifamily housing and sort of more denser housing development. I did just have a question about the environmental impacts. We're talking about impervious surfaces. I assume that's in regards to drainage and that kind of thing. We just had a member of our community who had issues with flooding. So I was just curious as to how that impacts runoff, flooding, whether there's any environmental impacts that can be mitigated through zoning to sort of alleviate that, if that is an issue, or if it's just so low a number anyway, it doesn't make much of a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Jamie?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, really quick, that's a great question that Max has. So just as a reminder, a lot of the development that some people are having drainage issues with in town were built well before our stormwater bylaw. And so any development that would go forward now would be susceptible to the utility costs, which then gets reinvested back into public infrastructure. So I think the key here is that when you work with setbacks, frontage, and you start chipping away at the requirements in our code, I think the message that MAPC and many that showed up at the hearings are trying to say is if we're trying to get that third unit from a 2 to a 3, a third unit or an ADU or whatever, when you start looking at parking requirements, setbacks, other requirements, trees, vegetation, the lot shrinks quickly. And I think Brian nailed it with the parking requirements. I think a property owner will just need the additional percentage flexibility to be able to customize that lot to make sure that they can get that unit and keep the parking, drainage, other personal responsibilities on that lot, right? On that lot. That's the key. That's a key piece. So all of those responsibilities don't end up in the road. And that the builder can actually go through the by right process. And I think to Councilor Chandler's point too, I agree with Brian on this and the EDC. At some point, it just becomes about flipping a coin in semantics. But I think what we heard from people that want to develop properties and get that additional unit, you need that flexibility of that additional space to be able to meet all the other setback requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Any other questions? Please.
Actually, it is a question. This is regarding apartment buildings, correct? For being able to build
No.
apartments?
No.
Am I misunderstanding?
It's again, GR5,
GR5.
just to define it, is around the further end of Dean Ave. It really wouldn't actually occupy any parcels because 117 Dean Ave is already built. If you look at actually the map with the parcels that are in this zoning district, very hard, we're not talking about apartment buildings. We're talking about a double-decker or a 2-floor maybe with a third attic, maybe a third unit, but the parking requirements, the setbacks, they need that additional space.
So
to be able to
basically,
do that.
somebody owns like a multifamily home. They
Multifamily.
want to rent out like a floor.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
As a legal unit. Just so- Sorry, I had to clause that.
Rent it.
I'm on camera.
Is there anyone else in council chambers has a question? Anyone out in Zoom land?
Is there a hand up?
No, that's the town administrator.
He's already has his hand up.
He's over there, yeah. Okay, seeing no further questions, I will declare the public hearing on zoning bylaw amendment 23-898 closed. And since we were just talking about it, I will, with the council's indulgence, I will move up the legislation for action. Zoning bylaw amendment 23-898, a zoning bylaw to amend the Franklin Town Code at Chapter 185, Attachment 9, Schedule of Lot, Area, Frontage, Yard and Height Requirements. First reading, I'd ask the clerk to read the bylaw amendment.
Why do you always smirk when you say clerk? I would be happy to read this, Mr. Chairman. Town of Franklin zoning bylaw amendment 23-898, a zoning bylaw to amend the Franklin Town Code at Chapter 185, Attachment 9, Schedule of Lot, Area, Frontage, Yard, and Height Requirements. Be enacted by the Town Council that Chapter 185 of the Town of the Code of the Town of Franklin is hereby amended by the following additions to 180, and deletions are crossed out. Chapter 185, Attachment 9, Schedule of Lot, Area, Frontage, Yard, and Height Requirements. And so these are the changes on General Residential 5, 30, the maximum impervious coverage for structures will be changed from 30 to 45. The maximum impervious coverage of structures plus paving will be raised from 35 to 55. There's an additional addition on the note number 7. It says permitted residential uses must be observe requirements of General Residential 5 district for residential use building only. Multifamily residential with 3 family housing units, and that's going to be added in. Mixed use buildings are exempt from this requirement. I'll find it. Oh, wait, where is it? Here. The foregoing zoning bylaw amendment will take effect in accordance with the Franklin Home Rule Charter and Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 5.
Move bylaw amendment 23-898 to a second reading.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none. Councilor Pellegrini.
Through the chair. So we are keeping, changing the 35 to 55 for residential 5,
Yes,
okay? Nothing was changed tonight on this.
correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yep.
Any further questions? Seeing none, the vote will come on the motion to move zoning bylaw amendment 23-898 to a second reading. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
8-0, sir.
Thank you. Okay, I'll now declare the public hearing open on zoning bylaw amendment 23-899, marijuana use overlay district, a zoning bylaw amendment to the code of the town of Franklin at Chapter 185, Section 5, zoning map. Jamie?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chairman, I added up onto this being a public hearing, I thought it would just be good to show everybody exactly what we're talking about here. So this is the marijuana overlay district. This was created in 2017 after the ballot question was passed. The overlay is in the industrial parks. For all intents and purposes, you can see them right here with Forge, Park, Grove, and Constitution. And right up, for those of you out there who struggle sometimes with zoning and to understand this very complicated language, this one's a good one. It's a house cleaning item. The good news is the town really, in the last 6 years, we've been very fortunate to attract some elite cannabis industry businesses that are doing very well. We've had a lot of feedback over the years from, particularly, just as an example, you'll see on the map X's. These are the parcels that are currently in the bylaw, and these are the ones that will be added in. I'll have Brian explain why in a moment, but just for an example, the house cleaning nature of this is where the YMCA is. And these other parcels used to qualify, but we've gotten feedback that, when we did this house cleaning item, it'd be great if some of these other parcels came off. There's been no business opportunities up in that area because you're within a distance, obviously, of a child care institution. And then really quickly, here's the Grove Street corridor on Kenwood. These ones over here have been taken off the bylaw because of the Amigo School.
Okay.
I can't remember the requirements, Brian will talk about it in a second, but you have to be a certain distance from the
Right.
edge of a property line from a religious or educational institution, so. And then there was one over here that got added. Things have just changed, the use of parcels. Actually, at the end of Kenwood at one point, there was a church at the end of Kenwood Circle.
Moved down
There
a little
isn't
bit.
anymore, so this used to be prohibited, but now, actually, the end of Kenwood Circle is ripe for development. And then third, Constitution, I guess, is that EMC?
That is,
I mean,
that is EMC.
That's an 800,000 square foot building, EMC Dell. We took that off. That would be a really, really, really big facility. For those of you, for context, if you go up to Netta and Forge Park, that's 80,000 square feet. If you go down and see the new building on Grove Street, that's going to be really 50 or 60,000 square feet. So if those are like large, you can only imagine 800, 750,000 square feet is really, really big. And then a couple of other parcels over here off of Upper Union got added due to, again, property changes in, we don't anticipate, as a brief update, I think the industry in general, as many people have seen in the news, has pretty much leveled off. And we feel like these basic house cleaning changes are worth putting in. It's certainly slowed down. My office doesn't get many calls anymore from businesses looking for places to go. There's still a couple that are in the permitting process on Grove, but after that, I don't expect a tremendous amount more of business growth in this industry in Franklin. We could, but I don't expect it much. So, Brian, if you could just maybe talk about some of the criteria and requirements, that'd be great.
Sure. The requirements are that our marijuana overlay district is to the west of 495. It has to be in an industrial zone, and it cannot be within 200 feet of certain items and 500 feet of other items. So 500 feet are schools, and 200 feet are daycares and things of that nature. The map that was shown with EMC, we could have left it on there we would have left it on there, but there's actually just to the north of it, there's a daycare.
Daycare,
So that's the
right.
reason it was taken out. Otherwise, we would have just left it in the map. It really wouldn't have mattered too much. So just when we go through, we just check what the uses are, and we add and delete, and then we update the maps. And that's really simply what we did. So anything specific, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Brian. Questions from the council?
That's good.
Councilor Cormier Ledger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian, are the parcels on these maps added because others were taken away and we have a requirement to have a certain percentage, or are they added simply because they've now become available and could be used by the marijuana industry?
The latter. There's really there's no requirements on size or anything of that nature.
Okay, and for just my own clarification, and maybe those listening, is there a restriction on the number of marijuana facilities that can be in our town?
Not really. I think that's more a Jamie question in a way, but I don't think there's really any restriction on whether you can have 3 or 4 or 5 or 10. I think it's really it's a zoning issue. If the parcel is zoned for it appropriately, they can seek a special permit for it.
Did you want to?
Yeah, just through you, Mr. Chairman, there is no quota in Franklin on the amount of licenses. Just so the public's aware, we don't do the licensing. The licensing is all through the state. We do the permitting, kind of similar to like liquor licensing. I mean, we do the land use stuff. The town could put in a quota. Communities like Brookline and I think Boston, some others have put in a maximum amount of licenses. We've never seen the need because we've never had more than 3 proposed locations. And 2 of those, have been pretty successful businesses. Netta, in particular, is the largest manufacturer on the east of the Mississippi River. They own several buildings in Franklin. They've been a huge corporate partner in the town. And Boterra on West Central Street was actually one of the state's first equity applicants. And so we're very proud to have them here as well, and they've been a great community partner as well. There was a third that was permitted on Grove Street, but it hasn't come to fruition. And I think part of that is just the settling out of the marketplace. And I think we haven't had a call in, I can't remember the last time, 5 years probably, of another retail operation. So if we ever see the need down the line, Councilor Cormier-Ledger, the town does have the ability to put in a quota. We've just never seen that much interest where a quota would be needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
All set, Councilor Cormier-Ledger. Councilor Sheridan.
Yeah, just curious, so if a church opens up near a marijuana place, does the marijuana place have to move, or?
No.
Okay.
No, it's who,
Everywhere.
if the church was not, is
Yeah,
not there
anytime.
and they move in, we're not going to make the marijuana
Okay,
place.
just curious,
move.
okay,
Not
thank
at
you.
All set, Councilor Sheridan. Councilor Frangillo.
I'll just point out quickly that we often think of retail facilities and then at some points grow facilities. There's also like a pretty large manufacturing facility in the middle that it's just trucks coming in and out and money for us without changing. It's not a customer facing entity. And so if there are entities like that want to call Franklin home in an industrial park,
Go for it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Any other councilors? Anyone in council chambers? How about anyone out there in Zoom land? Okay, seeing none, I will declare the public hearing on zoning bylaw amendment 23-899 closed. And we'll move to legislation for action. Zoning bylaw amendment 23-899, marijuana use overlay district. A zoning bylaw amendment to the code of the town of Franklin at chapter 185, section 5, zoning map. First reading. Clerk will read the bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair. Town of Franklin zoning bylaw amendment 23-899, marijuana use overlay district. A zoning bylaw amendment to the code of the town of Franklin at chapter 185, section 5, zoning map. Be it enacted by the town council that the code of the town of Franklin, this really isn't that easy to do. I have to be nicer to Glenn. Don't tell Glenn, anyway. But the zoning map of the town of Franklin be amended by deleting the marijuana use overlay district in the following 7 parcels of land as shown on the town of Franklin's assessor's map. Parcel number 288-004.
Motion to waive the reading.
Motion is second to waive the reading. All those in favor of waiving the reading signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Move bylaw amendment 23-899 to a second reading.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, the vote will come on the motion to move bylaw amendment 23-899 to a second reading. Again, a majority vote's required. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
8-0, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Moving back to presentations and discussions. We have a couple this evening, and the first is one of our favorite visitors. A presentation from the DPW projects update. Brutus Canareggi, DPW Director, and I'll let you introduce your team.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sam today is Mike Magdos, the town engineer, and also Doug Martin, he's the water and sewer superintendent. I'm also joined by Carlos Rebello, the highway and ground superintendent, Tony Bernetta, the assistant highway and ground superintendent, Derek Adams, the Stormwater Environmental Affairs Superintendent, and then Kate the Great Schoberg is in charge of our GIS.
Take the
the
win,
Great.
Kate.
Everybody knows Kate the
Take the
Great.
win.
I know. I like to embarrass her.
You're doing a good job.
And she's doing a better job. She's really good, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, just to come in and give you a couple updates on things, what's going on. So our current project update, the Janie Ave neighborhood, water main replacement, about $750,000 job. That was actually completed really early in the spring. It's a great water job. We bid early. The contractor had pipe that he already purchased, because pipe can take up to, I mean, we've heard anything, 50 weeks now? So he came in here, he's a contractor, worked in town before, he likes working for the town of Franklin. So he came in early, got it done, and we got a very good price on it. Grove Street Phase 1, traffic signal, Washington Street and Grove. That was finally completed. I think the chairman knows that. He finally gets to experience it. And
On a regular basis.
on a regular basis, we got to, and I think I said before the other meetings, it was kind of funny that the light just took so long to get in. I mean, we used to get these stuff off the shelf, but all of a sudden, COVID, whatever, we couldn't find it. But we finally got that in, and that seems to be working pretty well. Arlington Road neighborhood, that's the roadway reconstruction project. That's the area off Pond Street. That was recently just finished up. Union, I'm
No.
sorry.
I was gonna say.
That was
it's a
usually
long
just,
way away.
they're still finishing that up now.
Yeah.
But it's also tied into the work we just did on Union Street that's not shown here. We did the mill and overlay, and I think that whole area of town looks just great. And I gotta tell you, that contractor at Broken Stone, phenomenal. I mean, if you drive around other towns and you see the work that sometimes they do, the seams in the road, stuff that I'm looking at all the time, these guys are spot on. I mean, you see the castings. You ever drive down a road and, like, not in Franklin, of course, but you drive down a road and, you hit a casting, a sewer manhole, and it bounces everything else. I mean, they did a great job down there. So, once again, another contractor that worked in Franklin before. They like working here. They give us a good, we have to put everything out to bid. They like working here. They come back, and that's because of these guys sitting around, because we have such a good working relationship with them. The Grove Street Phase 2, this is a multi-use path, part of the SNET. This is a grant we got, and basically going to redo all of Grove Street from that section we did with the light Washington all the way down to Kenwood. The numbers came in better than anticipated on that, so we're actually going to be able to add basically a bike lane type sidewalk, oversized sidewalk like we did, that's going to further connect Washington Street to the SNET Trail. So SNET Trail is like freaking awesome. I think if people go down there and they've used it, it's really worked out well. So eventually, we were hoping to go from the SNET Trail to Kenwood eventually. But to be honest, that's $1 million just to do the sidewalk and the drainage and everything out there. So, but we're still looking at grants to try to get that done, and maybe it happens. But it's like what we do here in Franklin. We're doing things pacing times, and we're instead of just not doing it, we keep moving along.
Brutus, just for people's benefit that are listening, the Janie Ave, not everybody's going to know what part of town Janie Ave's in.
Off of Pond Street. And where the roads?
Pond Street, Oak Street Extension, north of Oak Street Extension, west of Pond Street.
Okay, that's fine. It was just, it just said Janie Ave, and I'm not sure everybody would know where
You're
that
right.
is.
It's basically the lower side of Pond Street heading down there. But it's part of the other neighborhoods. We've kind of hit that area. We had done Oak Street Extension a couple of years ago. That was like the worst one. Then we hope to go the other way eventually, part of the Waterline Road Improvement Program that I'll talk to you about later. More money. But these are kind of some other projects so that people are aware of. Chilson Park, new field playground development. This is about $400,000 grants and then in-house work. This is another project that, and I'll say like Nason Street Playground, $450,000. It's a great thing about Franklin Public Works working with the rec department, getting grants for different things, and then we doing a lot of work in-house, engineering, doing all the design, the inspections out there, particularly for Chilson Park. We put out a bid working, a piecemeal type bridge, so as funds came available, we were able to complete that. If people haven't been down there, some people will choose Chilson Park as Beaver Street, but down there, it's the area behind the turf field. It's really cool. I mean, there's like a Ninja Warrior thing down there. They had the lacrosse thing that was walls for the kids to throw the balls, because we were dealing with before the kids throwing the balls against the fence and wrecking the fence, which is obviously a maintenance issue, but also a cost. But now they actually have a dedicated place to go, and it's really good. The Complete Street Grant, we'll be installing this. We got a good price on this too. This is to give Mike credit for this one. Starting to do, it's part of the money that we got a grant program, but we're gonna put in some flashing pedestrian beacons, and that's going in on,
So there'll be one on Grove Street at the SNET trailhead, and there'll be another one on Lincoln Street at the intersection of Sherman Ave.
2 high traffic areas that make sense to have them if you've driven both those areas and you lot. And then we're putting some bike rack locations, the Common and
Down by the MBTA station, over on Union Street, and at Chilson Park. They'll be down at the park also.
And then, in case the folks at home don't know, we kind of did a rededication of the Sculpture Park, and which is kind of a cool place if you haven't been going down there. And that was a nice. I'll use the word collaboration between the school, because they love that word. But Public Works, we did a lot of it, and the kids came forward, and it was really a cool event. Pictures show some of the fish up there, but it's just a nice thing with we get to do in town to reach out. Beaver Street Interceptor Project, a couple things here. We got our notice to proceed. We issued that on August 9th. So basically they got, what, 1,000 something days?
30 months.
30
months, yeah.
A long time.
Almost 3 years.
So it's a really big project, and it's gonna impact everybody in Franklin, I'm telling you that right now. It's a lot of stuff people won't see, but next summer, basically, I don't have a drop dead date, but when we put a pipe down the middle of 140 from Beaver Street up to basically Pond Street, people are gonna notice. There's gonna be a lot of traffic, business is gonna be impacted, there's gonna be a lot of questions. So us as a team, we got together, we thought about this, we wanted to come up with a motto for it. And so this is our, what you're showcasing tonight is part, keep Franklin flowing. So everything we talk about this, our website's gonna be based upon this, you're gonna see a lot of signs, keep Franklin flowing. It's our information's gonna be going through there, and this is kind of like, it's a marketing thing. So we kind of done. You wouldn't believe how many poopy emojis are out there, but we kind of like this one. So, but that,
Smiling.
yeah, so it kind of puts a light on things, because I'm not gonna kid folks, and we talked about it. It's a big deal. I mean, it's the biggest infrastructure Franklin's ever done, for public infrastructure. I can't compare it to a school, but it's gonna impact everybody in a good and bad way. I mean, if we didn't do it, could be, millions more.
Let's not even talk about it, please.
Yeah, we went, huh?
Hang on, just let's hang on till it's done.
Don't jinx it.
No, but I will say where you guys did a good decision, is just because we had those floods last week, and up in, what town was it? Billerica. Their sewer main broke, and it's
Yeah.
now pouring raw sewage. They had to evacuate
Everywhere.
neighborhoods, and they're like, they're gonna spend $1 million. That's like nothing, okay? That's just to get the bypass going. Then they have to fix it, and they have to do everything else, and it's gonna have to done now, which is exponential cost. So what we're doing, that's not gonna happen, and we got a plan, so we're in good stead, okay? Enough about that.
Hang on, baby.
Just keep your fingers crossed.
Want to keep that emoji smile.
Yeah. So this is, just to give you, I don't even know how to present this to you. The Stormwater MS4 permit, we pretty much finished up our first 5 years, and we had to study. We had to do a big study, we had to work, our folks did work with a consultant to do this, and it's a phosphorus control plan. And this is what we have to, what EPA is requiring us to do over the next 5 years, okay? And this is what it's gonna cost us. Within 5 years, $30 million. Now, I gotta be honest with you, I don't know where this money's coming from. It doesn't make absolute sense to me. This kind of goes back into why we sued EPA, because part of what we can do is, get a realistic timetable. So but we're submitting this. I can't tell you this. How it's gonna be funded, I have no idea. I was talking to my peers down in Newton. They're looking at $180 million.
Ooh.
At least we have land. Think about we gotta do all the stormwater stuff. They gotta do it all in the ground. At least, we have places and we can do retrofits. I don't know where they're getting $160 million. And that's for every community that's up to Charles. These numbers are astronomical. I'm not sure how it's gonna go, but I just gotta let you know. And to put in perspective, our average, our utility, we just went into effect, which was at $56, which is a little low, we knew that going through it, but we, got through it. But if we had to do this $300 to $30 million over the next 5 years, the average would go up to $350 per year. I mean, it's like 400%, almost 400% increase. I mean, it's unrealistic, and I think we know that, and so, but that's on the radar screen, I just gotta present it to you.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
I know, I got more
It's a
good.
good-
We're gonna keep going.
Yeah.
We're not done yet.
He's only yet begun.
That's not the PFAS.
No, they haven't got to that.
That's phosphorus.
We haven't got the PFAS yet.
PFAS
That's
is another
phosphorus.
40 million. or
So, one of the things that we do about every 5 years, our pavement management program and sidewalk plan, and I think we're all familiar with that, we've done, this is our third iteration of it. So, our average SRS road is now at 71.73, so it's gone down. We've gone down, not good, gone down, like, so technically speaking, the way they evaluate our roads have gotten worse, which is what we said would happen, because we don't, if you remember, this goes back to the override that we try to do for roads and everything else. And then it used to be, in 2019, it was 53.56. Difference back then, though, and there's a lot of different schematics. Back then, it was a $39 million estimate, and right now our estimate's lower to do the roads, because we've done a lot of the big stuff that we put into it. And this is one thing that I talked to my staff and I talked to Jamie. So I basically put some rough numbers together. So since 2018, this is what the town's allocated for roads. This is a pretty impressive number, I gotta tell you. So Chapter 90, or RAP money, that was supplemental type stuff we got from the state. We basically got about $7 million. We talked to our chapter, so over the last 5 years. Water funding, then the water funding that's part of the waterline road improvement programs. Almost $4 million we put into our roads. Additional town capital appropriations, this is votes that you guys have made, whether it came from the hotel tax, leftover snow money, whatever it is, capital appropriations for just road work is, $6.7 million, that's a lot. Water capital appropriations, that would be specifically above and beyond that we did like the last $7.5 million that was available, almost another $1 million. Grants, 152,000. We get a lot of grants, but it's very hard to target grants for road work. There's grants for stormwater, there's grants for environmental type stuff, millions of dollars, but that's actually a pretty good number. And then operating funds, this has gone up and down through the years, but basically that's just in the general fund in my budget. Some years it's been $100,000, some years it's been more. This year you guys did a great appropriation for next year, but that's just for general maintenance that we do the type stuff. So we've almost, spent over $19 million in 5 years. That's a pretty good investment in our roads, never mind our whole infrastructure. So that's something I think the residents should be happy with, and the council, come up with the money, because I think we all know there's always competing things. There's always competing things. And this is kind of like, real briefly, if you look at the current RSR, and this is the new forecast that goes forward, that basically, if scenario 1, you can see if we keep spending $1 million, obviously, just Chapter 90 money, it's going to go downhill. And that's like every community. We all know that Chapter 90, it's not enough out there. Scenario 2, if we bump it up, scenario 5. But pretty much, we got to keep doing an additional $2.5 million just to keep things where we're at. We can analyze this all, but I just want to give you a heads up on that. Doug's going to talk about a couple of our, specifically, you guys had asked in the past about our water storage tank, so we just want to go over that real quick.
So just real quick, high level, so we have 6 storage tanks in town, 12 million gallons worth of storage. Why do we have storage? We have storage for fire protection, pressure, to maintain a certain pressure to all the residents and services, and equalization. So the difference between, our pumps are sized for max day, we pump that, and anything else comes out of equalization. So the tanks range from 1888, which is actually the second oldest, as far as I know, second oldest riveted steel tank, and that's our Hillside tank.
We're 7 when I started,
yeah.
so we're up to 2.
We're up to
I
2.
want to be number 1. That was a good investment back in
Yeah,
in 1888. Those guys spent some money on it, and all sitting around like you saying, well, I don't want to spend money in a tank. But they definitely got their money use on that.
Yeah, I guess.
Also shows that, you know, the investment that the town has put into it to rehab it. They put a roof on it, you know, originally, both those tanks, if you ever go up there, you can tell where they added the roof. The newest one, 1996, material are steel and concrete, so the hillside tanks specifically are steel. You can see the projects that we have scheduled, 13.5 million and growing with inflation. We have the hillside tank replacements. That's kind of our #1 priority. Just due to the age, the foundation, you know, that's something that we're looking at. So right now we're under getting design done to replace both those tanks with one singular tank on that same site. Another project that we're looking at is our Pleasant Street tank, to remove that, because we do have excess storage. And then that would help with some energy efficiency upgrades, because right now we pump into that tank and then pump out of there to the hillside tanks and Fort Chill tanks. So kind of double pumped, we can kind of get rid of that. And then the Bald Hill and Fort Chill tanks, those are our 2 concrete tanks, and those need some minor improvements. So.
And then these, you brought up PFAS, these are things that are on the horizon. We don't necessarily know what the full costs are, but they're all estimated. So I just want to, but this is stuff that we have to deal with some point, potentially.
Well, 7, I think the council appropriated that money, so we're in design right now. And then the other 3 are things that are coming up down the road. Fisher Street being our next, #1 priority. And then, Brutus had mentioned the water main replacement program, road replacement program. We want to continue to fund that.
So I don't know if you have any questions, those specific ones. But I will say that very important is the Fisher Street water treatment. That's our main producer. It always has been in the town of Franklin. The system is there now, they don't even make the cartridges for anymore. So we're going to rehab that, go to a system that's similar to
Grove Street.
Grove Street. I mean, use the same building, obviously, but just, redo the inside. But that's going to be like, we don't know the estimated cost, but that's definitely coming down the pipe that we're going to have to do. So I kind of put this together just to, I don't know, scare you. I mean, it scares me when I see the numbers.
You're doing it.
I was gonna say, make us run away.
But, the one thing is that why we do this is, and I hope you guys, you've been working together for a long time, I gotta plan this stuff, I gotta give you, I don't want you guys to be surprised. And this is why I'm putting it out there, and we have a plan in place, we're constantly trying to do it. And we're trying to constantly find efficient ways to do it. But anyways, basically our highway side, we're looking, it's just like general fund type stuff, is like $30 to $35 million, potentially. That's where we wanna be, that's the decision if we want to. That $35 million on the high side, that would be fix all the roads in town, to be 100%.
Okay.
I mean, realistically, that's never gonna happen, we know that, but where do we wanna be on that level?
Somewhere.
Stormwater, 15 to 30 million bucks over, however it lands, I don't know. But that's gonna be paid out of stormwater utility, and we'll have to deal with that, what we have to deal with EPA and everything else, but they're gonna force us or other communities to do. Water, $42 to $92 million. A lot of stuff is very realistic type stuff, especially the PFAS. We don't know, we're dealing with one now, but that's another that keeps coming down. The good news is there does seem to be some funding for that, but we're always not in those communities. It tends to be more in the other communities, the gateway communities and stuff like that, that tend to get it. But there is some funds up there.
Yeah, hopefully they continue to keep the no-interest loans.
Right.
We qualify for those.
And that's good at the federal level, because this is like a national thing. And like me and Jamie always talk about, they're actually talking about banning PFAS now. Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah.
Get rid of the problem
Yeah.
before we have to fix it? I don't know, but that's our government. And then, I'm not gonna bring up PFAS again.
Please don't.
And then, sewer, the 33, that's our number that we obviously got for the interceptor. But, just because we're fixing the interceptor, we still have a whole other, we got 24 other lift stations in town. We got other pipes we gotta keep lying, and, just general maintenance that we have to go through. So basically, you guys are looking at $120 to $195 million
over
5 years.
longer, yeah, different intervals, but you're talking 5 to 15
Yeah.
years, you know, so just,
It's
it's a startling statistic, but,
startling.
yeah.
And even it's a good, I think it was a good practice for me and my team to go through these numbers and look at them realistically and talk about it. Because
It's good for us too. It's good for us to be aware of what those numbers could be over the course of the next 5 to 10 years or whatever the case may be as well. I think it's good to get it out to the community so the community sees what we're dealing with on an annual basis when we talk about budget numbers. So, thank you for that, Brutus. Questions from the council? Councilor Chandler.
Oh, through you, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you, Brutus, and your whole crew, you guys, you got a good crew. It was nice they all showed up tonight, too, thank you. But I gotta give a quick shout out to Mr. Maglio, because that Union Street paving job, that could have been a real nightmare. And you, I saw you out there actually in the trenches.
It feels like a nightmare when it's going on, but
Yeah.
it went pretty quick, so.
But I want to thank you personally, because I know that you helped keep that together. You were out
We had
there.
a few people out there helping out. It was a team
I think he
effort.
was directing traffic too, Brian.
He was carrying cones, I was down there collecting signatures and, well, the cars were stopped, so I could just walk out. Seriously though, thank you for that, and, now I'm losing my train of thought. Oh, and about to keep Franklin flowing. I mean, luckily, we're gonna have the 4 lanes of traffic. I think you guys are gonna get the cars through, but those businesses, Jamie, your phone's just gonna be ringing. There's nothing we can do, though.
Yeah, and I mean, the sticker will be going out. I mean, I think the marketing piece is a way to try to get out that message. And obviously, I think, you know, we anticipate having those business meetings, or there'll be group meetings, I'm sure, at some point, just to communicate well through that particular group, right? Because that really is going to be the brunt of it, is really on 140.
And it's, Mr. Chairman, it's, and I just want to let the folks know at home, now the business, that's our anticipation with doing this, and we plan on, you know, we're going to be very proactive in this. You know, I don't want anybody surprised. We're going to be go out there. We don't want to be reactive to it. That's why we're doing the market. We're going to talk to them. We're going to have meetings. We're going to do, we've talked to other communities about, you know, maybe one week, I don't know, Taco Bell or Max, they can't get there, maybe do some special thing for them, have signs up, you know, and so they can go around and, you know, coupons or something like that. I don't know. But just to keep the word out there, to keep it going. Because the tough thing is, it's like anywhere in Franklin, it's tough to do a detour. I mean, if we close a lane, you know, they want to do it for productivity, whatever, I mean, they're going down Beaver Street, down Grove Street, and back out, I don't know, 495, or it's a long haul, right? So we gotta kind of figure that out. And it's like anything else, as it progresses, it will get better, it will get worse. It will get better, it will get worse. But we're gonna try to do our best to stay on top of it, and that's why we got the emoji. That's why we want a motto out there so people are talking about it.
I was gonna talk about some of those numbers, but everyone else will talk about that. I'm on.
Thank you, Councilor Chandler. Councilor Frongillo?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this is what I've been waiting to see. I think it's really important. I mean, we can't just close our eyes and pretend that these problems don't exist. I was hoping to talk a little about how this connects to different pieces that have come up. We talk a lot about budget, and that's a lot of people are here about budget. We just made this small change of our zoning. This is all connected. You know, one of the reasons why these numbers are so out of hand, you know, hard for us to tackle, is because for a very long time, and you've heard me say this before, but for a very long time, we built out in a way that sort of ignored the long-term maintenance costs for all this infrastructure that we're building out, right? We're the fastest growing community through the 90s, and it was all roads, and it was sprawling, and it was new roads, and we were giving sewer and town water to further and further out within the community. And the increased revenue that we were getting didn't pay for the maintenance that continues to build up. This is one of the reasons why we're struggling every year to keep up with our budget, because we've promised everyone a high level of service, but are capped at how much we can raise revenue. It's also one of the reasons why we're having this conversation about, one of the things that we're allowed to do to raise revenue. We really have two options. One is you choose to increase your taxes through an override, and the other, and most often both, but the other is you allow for new growth. And so as we talk about new growth, well, for a long time, we were building that new growth in ways that further added to all these infrastructure costs. And what we just did today, whether we realize it or not, is start to say, are there places that we already have infrastructure, that we don't have to further build out infrastructure, that we can allow the next incremental level of growth, that for all the reasons Councilor Hamblin named about supporting businesses and creating a community that's connected, all those, and we get to add new growth that don't further add to our expenses. So all of these pieces are tied together. These are serious numbers. I mean, at best, right, so the low end of your 5-year is $20 million a year. Just so people know, I believe your budget is about $6.3 million a year right now. If you add in capital that we give to you, free cash, maybe you're up to $7 million a year. So if you want the quality of services, if you want everything to be good quality, that's going to take $20 million. We currently allocate $7 million. That is a very, very big problem that we can't run away from or close our eyes to. And I appreciate you putting all this effort in, and I'm going to be pouring through that pavement plan, which is pretty cool. I appreciate your team working really hard to bring that to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Frondillo. Councilor DeLorco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, guys, for everything you do. You guys do a really good job. Just kind of quick on the Interceptor. Now, do we have a firm price on that, or because I know prices are going crazy, do we know for sure if we have a firm price or not?
Yes, yeah. So the bid by the contractor, which is Aqualine Utilities, was $26.7 million.
Yeah.
Our total loan amount is $33 million. Part of that is the engineer. We'll have resident engineers out there, and there's a contingency number.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
I mean, so hopefully we don't have to use all of that contingency, and hopefully we don't go over that.
We don't go over.
But there is extra money there in case.
I just know that a lot of the bids now are just going out and they're coming back crazy, and they add something else.
Yeah, and
onto it,
there's
you know?
Allowances in there
Yeah.
for fuel, different things like that we we had to put in there, part of SRF funding.
Okay. And I mean, our other sewer line there it's been there for over 100 and some odd years, so we got our money's worth out of that.
Yeah.
We definitely did.
For sure.
So,
Just like the water
Plus.
tank.
Just like the water tank.
Plus,
yeah. And I just want to tell people that when this does happen, just please be patient. You're talking to somebody that's driving home every day from Logan Airport with a tunnel closed. So trust me, it's going to be lousy. It's going to be terrible. It's going to stink. But just be patient, because it's something that we really need.
Yeah.
thank you, Councilor DeLorco. Councilor Cormier Ledger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Brutus, and all of your team. I apologize, is your presentation coming to an end, or is the sidewalk plan still being talked about? Because or did I miss it?
So part of the road evaluation that we're doing, they haven't fully completed that yet, but they're evaluating all the sidewalks right now. We added that on there in the springtime. I can tell you, I talked to the consultant, and that's where the 35 million, because is obviously I don't want to be pinned down on a number, but it's millions to just upgrade sidewalks and where they're at. And we have been looking at the different sidewalk issues. I brought a plan here. This is kind of interesting. You guys can see Mike can show you where the high impact, what this shows you is where most people use sidewalks. That's why it's, obviously the downtown area and over by Oak Street, that's where most of the sidewalks are used in town. So that's what we look at, and that's just another tool, like, we're only gonna have so much money for sidewalks, so much roads. So where we look at and doing the improvements in town. But that is forthcoming, and that's part of where we're gonna be. But it's part of the whole program. And the other part of that highway side is the parking lots. We did that before. That's the parking lots, whether it's here at the school, Remington, Jefferson, we have a number for those. We've done some maintenance on those too, but at some point they wear out, and we gotta fix them. Like we had to fix the one out here. Remember, you can see the drain work up there.
I just remember at the, wasn't that long ago at the second round of capital meetings, we talked about even if we could chip away at fixing some existing sidewalks a little bit at a time, and, if there was a 10-year plan or something so residents could see, oh, okay, they're addressing the sidewalks in front of our house and maybe our neighborhood will be next if they could see a plan, then I think it would be easier, I know for me or for other counselors that deal with these questions, to be able to say, I'm sorry that the sidewalk in front of your home has eroded or is a problem, but we know about it and we're gonna get to it and here's the plan. It's just a little, I'm not talking about new sidewalks, I'm not talking about new development, but I think it's incumbent on us as one of our duties as counselors, and why people pay taxes is they do expect the sidewalk in front of their home to be usable. And I know we have a lot of other priorities. I know we have a gigantic infrastructure, like unbelievable number up there. But if there was some way we could chip away at neighborhood by neighborhood and show folks a little bit of progress, I think that'd be a really good thing.
I totally agree with you, and we are doing that, and we have, what we focused on the last 2 years, and Carlos and Tony have been focused on, if you saw around town, we've been fixing a lot of the handicap panels out there because they weren't into compliance. And as much as, how do I say this, a trip hazard or a broken sidewalk somewhere on the subdivision is one thing, but if you don't have a plan in place, which we do, to repair handicap accessibility, that's a fine. And they can actually, the state can come after you for that with the architectural board. Yeah. So that's what we've been, and and they're realistic too. They know we can't fix them all at the same time because some were built at different standards, but we've been slowly working on it. We did a bunch last year, we did a bunch this year. I think folks have seen those through town. Because that's been our focus, but it's also, to your point, it's just when we do, our road improvement plan, some roads are completely reconstructed, some get chip seals, some get crack seals, some get mill and overlay. And that's part of the plan you're talking about. And yes, I do think people, and I want to do that. It's just another part of our asset management plan that we're doing. So that is forthcoming.
Great, thank you. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Cormier-Ledger. Councilor Pellegrini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for coming tonight and explaining all of this to us. Sometimes you come with good news, sometimes you come with a real whack, and this was it, to show them $120 million to $195 million. But I think it's good that the residents in town that always come back with a comment if something is wrong. Where does my tax money go? I pay taxes. Well, let me tell you, there's so much that tax money goes to, and there really isn't that much of it to go around, as you showed us tonight. So all I can say is thank you for bringing it to everyone's attention, and maybe the town should stop buying lottery tickets. And we could pay for everything. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
$1 billion.
I know it. Thank you again.
Keep coming, right?
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Somebody's winning, right?
Thank you, Councilor Pellegrini.
That's true.
Councilor Sheridan.
Thank you for the presentation. So kind of going along with Councilor Ledger's question. So if a resident thinks the street's going to get fixed, then basically the sidewalks are fixed too at the same time? If the street's going to be replaced?
You got to define fixed.
Well, I mean, like
So,
West Street. I remember when West Street was done.
Yeah, so when
Yeah.
we started this program a long time ago, and it depends on the road, but when we do the water line.
Yeah.
And I always make the joke that, not just to you folks at home, but I just was talking to the Municipal Lawyers Association, right? And they'll get it. No one cares about the pipe under the ground. They don't care if it's a sewer pipe, drain pipe, or a water pipe.
Can't see.
What they care about is a new road on top. Okay, so when we go in to do your neighborhood, east and west,
Yeah.
we went in there and we redid the road. We did the water line, we did the road, and we replaced the sidewalk. Some of that funding, like I showed you previously, came from the water. Some of that funding came from the general fund. Some of that funding came from Chapter 90. But we do, if you're gonna get a new water line, that program, and we're gonna replace that, we're one of the communities that do curb to curb. And I'm a strong believer that fix everything at the same time. It is cheaper in the long run. I know you drive in a lot of communities and you see like the temporary patch that goes down the road. It's awful. And it deteriorates the rest of the road. We don't accept that. We work a lot. Mike does a lot of work with a gas company. You know, actually they replaced the gas line over. I know he hit it 9 times. Oh, he's doing it. Yeah, he's doing it. That was a bad contract. He doesn't work in town.
Oh, the one on West Street? With the
Yes.
Cutting?
You remember how
Yeah, my wife had to like run out of the house for the.
Yeah. I was not a happy DPW director with that contract. But anyways, yes, so that's what we try to do. And I think all the roads that we do that on.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sheridan. Councilor Hamblin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair, thank you all for being here. And I know these numbers are huge, but it's really important for people to understand what we need to put in to the pot that Councilor Mercer has to be able to pay for these things. I agree, Union Street is awesome. I drove down it today, and I was so happy. There weren't all these things in the way to run over. But I have a question about the Fisher Street water treatment. Is that the one that got hit by the lightning a few years ago, right?
Yes.
And so
Fire.
there was a fire, right?
One of the worst calls I ever got. I remember they're going like, your water treatment plant's on fire. I go, it's a water treatment plant. What can burn in there? Well, there's a lot of chemicals, but I was very surprised by that.
Right.
But it wasn't a good call.
And so I remember then you said, I think you said it in the presentation, but those cartridges, those filters aren't made anymore.
No.
And so we really need to replace this.
Yeah, they were replaced shortly after the fire when that plant came back online. And then, we're coming up to their 5-year lifespan.
Okay.
So we're babying them and trying to get as much out of them as we can.
It was 5 years ago already?
I
can't believe
next
that.
year.
I know.
Wow, okay. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Hamblin. Any other questions from the council? Sure. Councilor Frangillo.
Yeah, thank you. I also wasn't sure if we were going to go more into the sidewalk master plan, so just through you, one of the projects, and I apologize if you mentioned it, but I believe we had allocated some money to extend the sidewalk on Washington Street.
Yes.
Do you have an update on
So-
that project?
You haven't allocated money. You've authorized us to borrow, or the town to borrow, but it's just not, Jay, you might want to explain this one.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chairman, so that stretch, the council in 2020 authorized the borrowing for $2 million for that stretch, which was our estimate at the time. I built into the 5-year fiscal forecast the borrowing for FY26, which included $3 million for that sidewalk. Amy is now working with with the state to get the $170,000 in ARPA funds that Senator Roush got us. So we're trying to piecemeal that together, and it's really an interest rate. It's really a borrowing, it's really when we want to go out to borrow for Remington Jefferson, the Washington Street sidewalk, potentially the high school update, and there was one other project that I'm missing right now. But I baked those numbers into that forecast, anticipating a reauthorization at a higher number, because it's just obviously going to, well, I shouldn't say obviously. I want to correct that by saying a lot of these bids we've seen recently, Grove Street in particular, surprisingly have in the Beaver Street Interceptor, which as Doug, Brutus, and Mike know, I was really panicked about. They actually came in really good, relative to, I think there is a plateauing I think it's just about watching the markets and seeing when the right time to possibly go out to borrow is, and also making sure that the staff are ready. They have enough time to do all this, and we want to access, obviously, the ARPA funds that I think Senator Rauschenberg already got us. So we're trying to piecemeal that together, and that's certainly the next new sidewalk. Brutus, on that map, does that sidewalk map over there show the recent improvements that we've done? I know that there was a map with that, with the projects that we have done. Maybe we could get a list of the improvements. Thank you, Mike. I can see, you already read my mind. I don't even need to ask it, but just getting a list of the improvements that we have made on sidewalks, we do have that information, and we'll pull that together. I thought it was on the map over there.
It's not, but we do have the amount, we have done a lot of sidewalk, replaced a lot of sidewalk in town, but most of that's been specifically as part of the roads program or the allocation that was done for Pleasant and Chestnut Street. And the section, folks at home, that section of Washington Street is like the best one to do, because it's literally going to connect where it comes up Washington at 495 all the way out to Washington Street where it meets. So, but that would really be a good conductivity for a nice walk around. So that's our number one priority. It has been for a while.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Frangillo. And Jamie, what isn't borrowing driven?
It's a nice segue to the next topic.
Yeah, exactly. Any other questions? Any questions from the audience? Please just come forward, name and address.
Maxwell Marangelo, 127 Central Park Terrace. Sorry to keep you away from your nap. So I have 3 questions. One of them was regarding how much of this can be financed through sort of water, sewer bill? Like, is there a rule against using it for roads, or some of it for roads? Second question was whether, I know you just raised water rates, but if you were to have a fee or a surcharge specifically when there's a drought in order to ration more water so people use less during times of drought, is that something that can be implemented, like to take effect automatically during a drought? And 3, completely separate question, when you do the analysis for the roads and sort of sidewalks and that kind of thing, do you take into account equity of the neighborhoods? Like, if I look in Franklin and I look at sort of a part of Franklin that's, not as nice as the other parts of Franklin, are the roads going to be not so nice too, or they're going to be just as nice as all the other parts of Franklin? So, thank you.
Thank you, Max. Jamie?
Max brings up a really great point, which is if you look up here, and this is a good segue to the next topic with the override mechanics in the next few slides. Highway is really Bruce showed, is really a lot of, eventually there's hopefully a lot of state funding that comes from this. MassWorks grant, we laid the groundwork for 2 years for $2.5 million. But stormwater, water, and sewer don't come out of the general fund. Those are utility enterprise accounts that are borne by the ratepayers. In the case of stormwater, that's everybody. Water and sewer, if you're on public water or public sewer, you pay into those rates. I know there's a pride out there of those that aren't on both because they're not susceptible to this, but Max does bring up a point. In terms of financing this, there's really different pots of the money in terms of how to do that, and I think to a lot of people's points, you try to hopefully raise the rates at a point to pay for the actual projects. Just like the Beaver Street Interceptor, we raised the rates to pay for that project. And so Max brings up a good point. In terms of the equity issue, it's not a part of the actual scoring analysis. That's just simply road conditions, right? But in terms of where we do the work, I think as the folks who have been here for a while know, if you looked at a bigger map, which would get so much data on it, it would always be confusing. It's actually, we try to hit all areas of town. I mean, if you think about the Alpine neighborhood, Ruggles, Milliken down here, that was done a few years ago. And we try to hit with parks, roads, water mains, Mike, Doug, Carlos, Brutus, the whole staff, Kate, everybody, Derek, they all try to make sure that they share that around the entire community so that one side of town or another side of town or one neighborhood gets a disproportionate amount. And they fairly balance it out really, really well from year to year. Even if you look at the list of projects that were up there earlier that were currently going on are in different parts of the community, right? And that's, I think, a really important message to the community, that everywhere is getting some sort of investment somewhere. We know it's never fast enough, for everybody, but we try to hit those quadrants of the community in each year.
Thank you, Jamie. Please, behind it, no,
I just want to add one thing.
sure, while she's coming up, you
Mr.
can.
Chairman, I want folks to know at home too, with these different pools of money, the highway is kind of like a choice, where we want our roads at. You look at stormwater, it's completely different. That's mandated. We have to do that. It's not a town choice.
Right.
That's a federal government choice. They're making us spend that money. Okay, we can't say don't do it, whatever. Water, there are certain things there that we are mandated to do. Some of it is we do have to take care of our system, same with sewer. But a lot of that money is not choices you're made here. It's people from the outside telling us what we have to do. So I just want to throw that out there.
Thank you, Bruce. Please, name and address.
My name is Kathleen Pennell, and I'm 118 Forest Street. I'm here to talk about, well, I wasn't here planning on this, it was all about the override, but now sidewalks are huge with me right now because Forest Street is a treacherous street. I live right in the middle of two horrible curves. I take my life in my hands every time I try to run to my mailbox. And I'm telling you that they've come pretty close because they speed on that road. I have two young neighbors on either side of me with young children. I literally said to them, go through my backyard. I don't care how many times you go back and forth. I do not want those kids going across in the front of my house. I said, please let them run back and forth. So I do. So I have no privacy left now. The kids are always peeking and bringing the door down. But anyway, we really need a sidewalk, at least on that side, because of the Jefferson School as well. These parents don't want to bus their kids. They don't want to have to keep driving their kids. They literally, if they had the sidewalk going there, they could walk into Hunter's Run, into Stage Harbor, where there was a sidewalk. There's a short section of sidewalk that when Jefferson was built, and then they stopped. And I thought, I thought it was going to go all the way down that side for people to be able to walk or put a crosswalk. So anyway, it's dangerous. And then they're saying to me, wouldn't it be lovely if we had the sidewalk on that side, we could go down to the King Street Park. But no, you have to get in your car and drive all the way to Washington Street to go in instead of walking down the street with your children. I mean, I just feel that it's a necessity. I've lived there 34 years. I see the sign at the beginning of my street, the scenic route, a scenic street.
Scenic street.
Really? It's a very dangerous street. And I just wish somebody could do something about that. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. And it's, again, we're talking about dollars and cents, and I'm sure every street in town is somewhere on the list for sidewalks, but where, again, that's part of what you're looking at now as you build a forecast. Steve, before you, Jane had raised her hand.
I have an actual question regarding the stormwater, and we all know how I feel about it. But in your presentation, you had said that it's gonna go roughly 56 up to, $350 a resident, right? That would be the fee?
Average, yeah.
Okay, it's not yet, it's the potential. Okay, the idea with the fee was that all the businesses that are exempt from taxes, like Dean College and other things, would also be paying into the stormwater fee. So what would their average cost be? Because if we have to come up with 30 million, we'll just say based on these numbers, how much are they paying already, and how do you figure that the average resident's now gonna have to pay an additional $350 on top of everything else that has just been raised in the last 2 years?
Okay, Jane, I'll let Jamie.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, as I'm sure the president knows, standing behind you, Dean College does get charged for the stormwater fee. The religious institutions get charged for the stormwater fee. And in the town budget this year, one of the inflationary factors was that the municipal facilities department has a stormwater line item in there, and we pay on behalf of the town and the schools. So everybody pays, and everybody also pays the same exact rate. So it's $18.66 $18.66 per 1,000 square feet of impervious coverage. And so everybody pays the same rate. If you have more impervious coverage and you're contributing to the problem at a greater level, like Franklin Village Mall, EMC, I'm just highlighting a couple of large properties with a lot of asphalt, they pay a lot more. I believe, just for illustration, the town pays about $70,000, I believe, was in the budget for all of the town and municipal and school parking lots, filled buildings and whatnot. What Brutus is referencing up there is $350 is, if we want to meet the federal obligation over the next 15 years, which the stormwater the stormwater program is a requirement in the permit for another 10, 15, 20 years. I'll be retired, we will all, be moving on. Other people are going to continue on with this. I can't predict what EPA is going to do in 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. But what Brutus is just simply saying is, if we all paid that rate today, okay, we'd be able to meet our obligation today. We don't have to. But make no mistake, I'm sure next session or in a few years, couple years, the council will have to consider raising that $18.66 rate up to, I'm just making a number up, like $24.75 or $28.30. We're gonna have to do those calculations. We haven't done them yet. But we're not going to just go from $18.66 per thousand to $350 per thousand. That's just not sustainable for the Franklin it's just not sustainable for families. You just can't do it. And so what Brutus is just articulating is, slowly but surely over a long period of time, decades, the rates are going to have to be increased to perform the work necessary, including drainage and culverts and all phosphorus and all that stuff. We're going to have to raise those rates up to meet the permit obligations from the federal government. I hope that gives some clarity, Jane.
It does. One other question. I don't remember which screen it was, but you were talking about the water towers and how you use it for like the fire and the water pressure and stuff. So I have a question on the water pressure. The water pressure you're referring to, is that the pressure that it's delivered to the town, to the residents, that's coming out?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I had to put on a regulator in my house because all my faucets blew out when they started doing all the construction on Maple Street. The water pressure is extremely high that goes into the homes. I've had 4 different plumbers I've had to come in, and they said Franklin's water pressure is astronomically high, and it's higher than a lot of the surrounding towns. And a lot of buildings who have older pipes, I know one guy, I don't know him personally, but he was on, I believe, Beach Street, and his pipes blew because the pressure coming into the house, the pipes couldn't handle it. Now, I spent $1,000 to put the little pretty blue box inside, so that way when the water hits my house, it changes the pressure before it hits my faucets. Should we be considering that maybe our water pressure is a little bit too high going in to all these homes, and that could be a potential problem going forward?
Derek, go ahead.
Through you, Chair. So the tanks set the pressure grade line for the highest elevations in town. With that said, there are low-lying areas, like you were saying, off of Maple, again, off of Pond Street to the west, down towards 495, that when houses are built or were built, they had to put in a pressure reducing valve. So all those houses have one. That is an item that fails from over time. When it does fail, though, it should fail closed, and then that's something that has to be replaced.
But in saying that, was notice given to any potential residents that were actually already existing in homes that were built before all that happened? Because I know I was never notified. And if that's the case and that's gonna stand, then it's something that residents should be told about before they have a burst pipe in their house, because the pressure's too high. I found out because I literally blew out 4 faucets at the same time.
These tanks have been in place since 1888. They haven't changed in elevation, so the pressure in town should have, I can't speak for the past, but it should be consistent to what it is now.
Okay.
Thank you. Is it, Steve?
Yes, thank you. Steve Sherlock, 10 Lawrence Drive, also Franklin Matters, Franklin Public Radio. Just wanted to do 2 things. One, thank Doug and Jake, for spending time. We spent about 90 minutes or so. While covered a bunch of details here, we were able to go deeper 2 years ago on all the water from the pump through the faucet, and then this past June on all about the sewer. So if you really want to know more, there are the 3 water ones on their page, the 3 sewer ones are currently on mine. I believe they're going to put them on their page eventually. But we spent about 90 minutes in 3 separate sections going into much more detail. So kudos to them for taking the time to do so everybody can listen to it and really find out more, because there is a lot of detail available. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Councilor Hamblin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just remembered a question that people ask me a lot. The Pleasant Street, Chestnut Street redesign of that intersection, is that people tell me that that's part of a plan, there was a grant, I don't know if.
Letter went out today.
Yeah, we've looked at that intersection. It's not the worst in town, but I think Brutus and Mike would agree. It's one, like, the King Street, intersection with, over here, like, that requires houses. Yeah, you can't just do that, right? You gotta wait probably a long time to do the intersection over here. But Pleasant and Chestnut.
That's the King Street 140
Right.
intersection.
Yeah, but Pleasant and Chestnut is doable. We've looked at that. It's likely a rotary structure. And I will give credit to Rep. Roy. I have no idea how he got a $10 million earmark and a bond authorization. Amy just wrote the letter on behalf of us the other day to start laying the groundwork with the Commonwealth to try to see if we can get that money, because that is a project that in the near future is doable, because we already own all the real estate. We just need the money to do it. But that will be an expensive project. So we did not get a grant.
Okay.
We got a bond authorization, just like borrowing. The state's going to have to do that too. But you got to write the letters, and early birds get the worm. So MassWorks worked out really well. So we're kind of starting to lay the groundwork to see if maybe in the future we can work on that project too.
I'm on it, Jamie.
I know.
I'll call it tomorrow.
Thank you. I thought that would be a good update as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Jamie, just keep writing, please.
I have someone to help me.
I just want to add one thing on there, because it's
Last
another,
thing.
it's another good thing the town did. That was originally looked at in a tip program, like you did
Right.
Pond Street. And when I got here, but the design costs were so much, and it was actually pushed into another tier. I mean, this is 10 years ago, it's going to go over $10 million, that, when we start, we would be competing with like Route 2, just to make it simple. So the town looked at it, what's the best way we could do it? And we did it in-house. And basically, we used our town money, we saved probably $8 million. And, the walls that are built out there are not the same standards, and, the width of the road. Like, we would have had to create Pond Street going down Pleasant Street. I don't think people would want that, the wide road and everything else. But we were able to put the sidewalk in there, and it was something that was done over 12 years. And then once again, that's what Franklin does. We find a way to do things. We do some road improvements out there, do some wall improvements. We're going to be doing some more with the development with the churches. We're going to do some more traffic calming out there. So it's always going, but we save money in the long run, we really do.
Thank you, Brutus, and thank you to you and your team for a great presentation. I'm not sure we liked what we heard, but but the bottom line is it's great information. It's great information for the council as a whole, as well as the community, to just have an idea of what we're looking at over the next 5 to 10 years. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And remember, keep Franklin flowing.
Okay, next item on the agenda is discussion, Proposition 2.5, operating override, kind of the do's, the can-do's, the cannot-do's.
So
Go ahead, Jim.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, so I only got a couple slides. These have been out there before. And then we'll pass it over to Mark to talk about some of the ethics and OCPF issues. People have asked a lot, and I know we didn't get to it at the Joint Budget Subcommittee meeting for good reason, because there was a lot of great questions. But I'll just go through it again. I did this at the Finance Committee earlier in the year. So the Override 101. The first step in any type of override discussion is really the school committee begins the process with an override. I put a caveat up here, unless schools are not asking for any additional levy capacity, then the schools are not needed. In 2014, Brutus just referenced it, the town tried an override for just road work. That didn't require any school committee input. But if the schools are looking for additional levy capacity, additional monies beyond what we've projected, they need to have at least some sort of process, I guess, for themselves to discuss what their needs are. And I think you would agree, Mr. Chairman, the average resident, when you're considering an override, wants to make sure you have done everything possible to avoid that question, and that all the money that's being spent is being spent wisely and well. And so those questions, as you know, Mr. Chairman, as being through these before, those questions come up. And so the school committee really has an integral role here in any type of override question or discussion. The second step is the town council reviews the request of the schools and also has a discussion with non-education stuff. I think we've heard from all of you, as well as Brutus and others tonight. There are other issues in town that need to be discussed publicly. I think that is not legally mandated, but you have to have those discussions, so I'm just putting them on here. I know there's been some questions about what's the bare minimum legal requirement. You don't legally have to do it, but you have to talk about it, and the town council at a public meeting has to vote to put a question on the ballot. Step 3, which I would inject in here, and I think it was talked about a couple weeks ago, is the Joint Budget Subcommittee, again, not required, but the way our form of government is, probably should take a look at some sort of proposal, or at least the menu list of items of what all the departments and/or the schools are looking for, and have some sort of discussion. I have a general feeling that number might be large based on what we just heard, but I think as we went through the budget hearings this year, and George Conley asked at the Finance Committee, he asked most of the department heads, if there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, what do you need? And actually at this year's FinCom hearings, we did get a lot of good answers from a lot of our department heads, Felicia, Danielle, the chiefs, et cetera. After a joint budget committee, if the community decides they want them to review some of this material, really the only real legally required step is that the town council needs to coordinate with the town clerk, who's here tonight still, on an election schedule. I've put some qualifiers here. Election schedules vary based on a variety of factors, like the election date. Most notably, the real big factor is whether it's a local election, state election, or federal election. Those change the requirements of the window of time at which the council would have to put a question on the ballot. And I've listed those out here. The minimum amount at a local election is 35 days. And we're going to discuss, and that's the same for a debt exclusion. So we're going to talk about that probably at the next meeting, just to deal with the Tri-County issue that the town clerk had mentioned before. Obviously, all of the communities within the Tri-County district are starting to realize it's Labor Day soon and are wondering a little bit more, where the MSBA process is and things like that. So I expect that to be up later after Labor Day. Federal elections, if it was a federal primary, presidential, or a general, those have different requirements, and we're looking into those. We believe those are 90 days, but there may be a little bit different criteria for a primary versus a general. But generally speaking, you need at least 3 months if it's a federal, and you need 35 days for a local. I've added a few links up here. I'm sure a lot of folks have already read a lot of the Prop 2.5 stuff. Again, the key element here is if a agenda item is on the council agenda, it's really the council as the legislative body that would put that question on the ballot in coordination with the town clerk's office to make sure the considerations of the voters and the election staff are considered with coordination. There are some, I won't get into them tonight, we'll wait for that discussion, but there are some unique things about a ballot question has to be on a separate ballot, and There's some other little nuances. Again, I won't go deep into them, but when the community's ready, that's why we work with Nancy and her staff to make sure all of those things have been considered to make sure that the voters have a safe and fair place to go. As we're about to hear from Mark, the town administrator, superintendent of schools, and the paid staff cannot advocate for or against an override with town resources. As you'll hear from Mark, the superintendent and I have a little more leeway because we're the CEOs of those organizations discussing these publicly with all of you. But Mark will talk, and he's written a long memo that was in the packet as reference material for everybody moving forward, in addition to some guidance materials from OCPF and the Ethics Commission. But generally speaking, we cannot use municipal facilities, we cannot use school facilities, we cannot use emails, we cannot use town phones. Anything that's paid for through the taxpayers, those resources cannot be used to advocate for or against a ballot question, whether it's an override, debt exclusion, or anything else. And I just want to say, I put this as the last bullet point, grassroots organization is required, ballot question committee. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge at the joint budget, Mr. Chairman, I know you felt the same way. Huge kudos and 2 big thumbs up to a packed room, a packed Zoom call. There's folks here tonight. Give a lot of credit to Ruth Ann and a lot of the other residents for really, in a very short amount of time, trying to pull that grassroots network together. I was just thrilled. And as I know school committee member Dave Callahan heard on my podcast this week, the more people that are in this room for more of these discussions, the better. I want the room to be hot. I like it when it's sweaty because that means a lot of people are here. That means people are listening, they're engaged, and that's really a really, really important figure for any type of override. I've gone through the override summaries before. These are just some high-level stats. In terms of, I know the narrative has always been Franklin's only passed 1 override. I think we all agree it's a new Franklin from those days. And we really should look forward to the CPA vote a couple years ago as hopefully a more of a litmus test where it was 60% favor and 40% against in the largest election turnout in town history. So that was a good sign. And I think the message there is that when we as officials engage and communicate, listen and talk with different folks throughout the community, not just the senior center, but also some of the employee groups, the downtown partnership, business communities, chamber of commerce, everybody, when we get them together and we talk to those stakeholders and we bring them with us as part of this discussion, I think you see results up there for community preservation. Councilman Hamlin and I and Councilor Mercer and I have talked about this many times. I think if that vote were today, with the Redbird Schoolhouse, the open space, all of the other things we've been able to do with CPA money, I know there's a lot of people I've talked to that voted no that would vote yes today. So we're now proving the trustworthiness of those monies. Just a couple of other projects up there. I think everybody knows Tri-County, the police station, Davis there, and potentially down the road, 2030 and beyond, maybe even a new school. We talked about some of the borrowing things at the last meeting as well. And so I'm happy to obviously answer any questions. That's literally it. I did include in the packet, just as reference material for folks, I did include in the packet all of the overrides. They're on the DLS Gateway, Division of Local Services. Geeks like me love going in there and seeing those things, and I could sit in there all day. I printed out a synthesized chart to give the community a tool. It doesn't include every override that's been done in Massachusetts, because I know some that aren't on there, but it gives everyone a guide. The one thing I noticed, Mr. Chairman, I'll end on this, that I saw on that chart that was very interesting, was most overrides are less than $1 million. And there's reasons in the lines of all those communities of very strategic investments that a lot of communities have done. Obviously, you can look at some that are larger as well, but I did that in there for the community just to give people some public data that's out there. So I'll now pass it over to Attorney Sorrell, who will go through the memo and outline the high-level considerations of state ethics laws, as well as Office of Campaign and Political Finance laws, and how these relate to elected officials, as well as paid staff, volunteers, And just some of the four corners of the puzzle. I'm sure there'll be some great questions, but now I'll pass it over to Mark to talk about some of those issues. Thank you.
Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, council through you. So I've given you basically a one-page summary memo. What you need to understand is there's two distinct statutory schemes that govern, and each is governed by a separate state administrative agency. So there's the Office of Campaign and Political Finance. And they basically, as Jamie alluded to earlier, regulate or in fact prohibit the use of public funds for campaign and political activity. So that is chapter 55 of the general laws, which has a section in it, section 22A, expenditures for political purposes. And that specifically states, any officer of a governmental unit violating any provision thereof or authorizing such violation, or any person who violates in any way knowingly aids or abets the violation, shall be punished by a fine of not more than $10,000 or by imprisonment for more than 1 year or both. So it has way more teeth than I thought, because the Office of Campaign and Political Finance historically has not exercised the full powers that the statute grants it. In addition, they also have the ability, if there's an inappropriate public expenditure as they determine, and we saw the preliminary of this rise in a news report out of Brookline, the monies need to be reimbursed, and they cannot be reimbursed from taxpayer funds. So if municipal resources are improperly utilized, somebody's got to come back, somebody else has to come up with the money, whether it's a advocacy group or whatever. And thirdly, the risk can also be taken to the courts by a 10 taxpayer suit challenging the improper expenditure of public funds. And in fact, that was the source of the one case we have for guidance, which I've cited in my memorandum, and you could easily find in the materials I've also given you, or if you want to see the full decision, it's easily accessible. Anderson versus the City of Boston, which was 1978, Supreme Judicial Court. That case involved the City of Boston's actual expenditure of public funds to advocate for some political thing. And the Supreme Judicial Court, interpreting Chapter 55, said, no, you cannot expend public funds or public resources. Then it was left to the Office of Campaign and Political Finance to interpret the statute, well, they already did, they were set up under the statute, but they then applied Anderson versus City of Boston and said, this is not, this case involved actual taxpayer funds, but as we read the case law, this decision, it's not limited to actual funds, it's limited to any resources, public resources, which then means use of buildings, equipment, emails, whatever. So the campaign finance law, the Office of Campaign and Political Finance address improper use of improper activities in the context of use of public funding or resources. And I told you what the penalties are. The other statute, which is generally unrelated, but there is this overlap in this particular area, is the State Ethics Law, 268A. That's administered by the State Ethics Commission. It has comparable penalties for willful violation. And that gets into the individuals, and particularly the statute governs the conduct of public employees, which I've stated on other occasions is an extremely broad definition. with that background and overview, both the Office of Campaign and Political Finance and the State Ethics Commission have issued written advisories or guidances as to what you can and cannot do. And I've given them to you. The best way to approach it is to basically view it as a general prohibition. If you want to be really conservative, you can't do it. Once you decide you're going to do it, then you get into reading into these guidances, and there's all kinds of nuances. One which Jamie alluded to is, generally speaking, nobody can use public resources for advocacy. That being said, there are exceptions. So you can have an informational session. You can also allow your building to be used for advocacy if it's open for everybody to have access, not necessarily at the same time. As far as individuals, the Ethics Commission draws a very bright distinction between elected and appointed officials. Elected officials have much broader discretion because that's the public policy as to, that's why they were elected, what they're supposed to be doing. And that's what the agency recognizes. So you've got more leeway and discretion in terms of, well, let's focus on just the, what we've actually talked about here, the context being the Prop 2.5, because when you're talking candidates and endorsements, that's a whole different thing. And both of these guidances, as thick as they are, have sections that deal just with ballot questions, local ballot questions. So when you're talking local ballot questions, you have broad discretion to talk about it and the pros and the cons, and even to take a position. Similarly, the managerial people, appointees, such as the town administrator, the superintendent of schools, have similar broad authority given their specific positions and the duties of their positions to speak broadly and to within context, within limitations, to advocate. Again, whether or not you can advocate has to be separated out from how you're doing that. So you maybe have the authority to advocate, but can't do it using municipal resources. So that's kind of a broad overview. As I said, you really need to spend some time, not with the whole of these two memos, but just go to the sections that deal specifically with ballot questions and the do's and the don'ts. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mark. I think one obvious question is, we as elected officials, if we were asked to go to the Rotary Club and speak about a ballot question, we are allowed to do that.
Yes.
If, let's say, the Rotary Club, and I use that club because back when we were doing the high school, I can remember going. And the town administrator, if they were looking for further information, could the town administrator and/or the superintendent of schools go to provide information?
Yes.
I wanted to put those 2 points out there because I think they're very important.
That being said,
I knew you were going there.
you as the chair of the council cannot come into the administrative offices and say, hey, Jamie, I was at such and such a group and we talked about this, and what I want you to do is prepare this pros and cons and this advocacy thing using your staff, the office machinery, et cetera, and send it out. That's the distinction.
Totally understand.
Yeah.
Councilor Sheridan.
Could Chairman meet the town administrator someplace else and ask them, not using
Yes,
not
because
in the town hall?
you can actually, you can take a vote to support
Okay.
the ballot question.
Well, I'm saying-
As elected official. The principal, the superintendent and a town administrator can take a position that this is important for the town and to advocate for it. Again, it depends how they go about advocating. They couldn't do a mass mailing.
Right, right.
Go ahead.
But you can't advocate for in the public building either, for the town. Like, you can't come and ask. But could the chairman meet?
Well,
town
given the
administrator?
fact that you can take a vote to support,
Yeah.
and the only place you meet is in a
Right,
public
right.
building, that's why I'm saying there's these gray areas and nuances in these memos, which frankly, sometimes is the fact that people writing these things haven't actually been down in the trenches to know how things work at the local level.
Yeah.
So they come out with things that at least appear to have some inconsistencies in them. And which is why, to be safe, you have to act conservatively. And they're both available in advance for advice, so that, if you know something's coming up and it appears to be a gray area, and you've read this thing through 10 times and you still can't come up with a straight answer, you can make contact. Good luck with the hybrid form of state government that's still in effect, but trying to get them. They probably, you won't get somebody directly as you would in the old days pre-COVID, but if you leave a message, I would assume they'll get back to you within a fairly short period of time.
Councilor Sheridan,
Yeah.
you all set?
Yeah.
And again, I think it's important for everybody to understand that we as elected officials have some restrictions, but we also have some latitude to be able to provide information to the public. And whether those informational meetings were held at a school or at town hall, they can be held, and our administrators, so to speak, the town administrator as well as superintendent of schools, could be present to provide information to whoever that body is that you'd like to speak to.
The caveat being, if you're going to use public facilities, that people with opposing views
Have the right to be there,
opportunity.
absolutely. Or, again, open to the full public. Okay, I'm sorry, I've jumped the gun here. Councilor Chandler.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the town attorney. Okay, so obviously, we're elected, we're not paid. Now, the town gives us our .gov email, which they do pay for. So could I use that paid, our email is paid for by public funds to email One Franklin? Or would that be a
The short
no-no?
answer, I would say is no.
Okay, so I just want people to know we can't use even our
Right.
email.
And in fact,
Yeah.
they recognize, again, with elected officials, if you happen to be an elected official who was also a paid employee of the town, that would add a whole nother layer to the restrictions on it.
Okay, I just want to know that, because people can request all our emails, so it's obviously.
People have access to our,
Yeah.
we can't stop the emails from coming to us.
To us.
But we
But-
can't
Yeah,
respond
I just want to know
from
if I
them.
could use that email to answer something from One Franklin. The answer is no.
No.
Thank you.
Well, you said.
The
reach
safe,
out.
answer is no.
I'm sorry, sir.
I understood your hypothetical to be you initiating something. If you get something, you can respond to
I
it.
can respond.
Oh, you can.
Okay.
And they actually draw a distinction, again, that I thought was somewhat artificial. Both commissions do this, that you can respond, certain people cannot initiate or be proactive, but they can respond if the inquiry is made to them. So, again, because of your elected positions, you don't have to consider that. Jamie doesn't, but as you get lower down the rungs, that becomes an issue.
Okay,
That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you, Councilor Chandler. Councilor Cormier Ledger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this is a question to Jamie, because this has come up a few times and I haven't known quite how to answer it to people. So hypothetically speaking, the council approves putting a override question to the public, and the public has the vote, and then the public approves it. What is the typical timeline that a resident can then expect when that new amount of money would hit them? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Like, 'cause I haven't been able to tell, I mean, or is that simply a matter of when the vote takes place? Because it's a little confusing, so.
It's a phenomenal question. I mean, all these are great questions, and this is what I hope to have, and I hope other folks have them too. It's really up to the council. I mean, you could, for example, I mean, ultimately, it's your decision about when the override would essentially begin. You know, I mean, traditionally, you know, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but traditionally, you're going to make a decision effective July 1st, fiscal year 2025. The question would be, will you raise the tax X amount on that date, so that there's some specificity in there. It's not just arbitrary. There has to be a design timeline at which you actually make that effective. It could be January 1st, you can make it October 1st, you can make it a whole series of things. That's part of our ability to discuss the strategy, and that's why I, myself and the superintendent, have a little more leeway, because we can discuss some of the mechanics with the council and the school committee. But you would basically be forthright with folks about when that obligation of that tax would hit. To case in point, this will be a discussion at one of the next meetings on the Tri-County, okay? In a sense, we know that obligation is gonna come, but the bonds isn't gonna hit for probably 4 more fiscal years, so we would probably anticipate and say FY '28, whatever the date is, you know, this would go up by X amount of dollars for what purpose? So the council actually specifies when an override goes into effect. It doesn't have to be within 2 months, 6 months, 8 months, it could be a year away. But ultimately, the council makes that final decision.
Okay, and my second question, Jamie, because this came up and I didn't know how to answer it either, but apparently some communities that have done overrides have also looked at tier programs based on income eligibility rather than sort of a blanket override to everybody. So can you speak to that for the folks listening? Because I haven't been able to answer that with any amount of authority.
I think there's an appetite out there, for good reason, to analyze that. I'm going to also ask Mark to confirm this, so I'm not incorrect. I do not believe you can do that, because you're basically raising your tax rate. I'm just round numbers. You're saying the tax rate per thousand is $12.50, and you want to go to $13. That has a blanket effect on everybody, because you're really just permanently raising the tax rate and the levy up. And I don't believe there's a mechanism at which to say seniors are exempt, income eligibility requirements. I can definitely tell to my right, in my peripheral vision, the jacket is ready to speak.
Because I mean, just quickly, there's a lot of that going around.
No, but I think people want to look at it. There's a difference between looking at it, which there's an appetite out there to be sensitive, because more affluent folks want to obviously raise taxes, and we're sensitive to people with lesser means. I think that's a widespread value in Eastern Mass. Mark?
As a general proposition, municipalities have no authority or very little authority to vary the tax law as the legislature establishes it. That being said, I have anecdotal, and maybe you know better than I, that there have been municipalities here and there that have enacted or succeeded in enacting special legislation that allow them to do other more creative things than the tax law strictly applied allow.
Right. So I'm just trying to be very straightforward. I really would not advise the community without further really detailed research. I don't believe that that's possible. So I know we want that to happen, but we'd have to go through, Representative Roy, we'll have to talk to, House Counsel, we'd have to go through
That might even be a state constitutional
may even be
issue,
a state constitutional issue.
in which case the legislature.
And so
could
I
override.
just want to be clear, because I think that is I'm not saying it's not worth doing, that's up to everybody here, but if we go down that path, that could be a lot of time, a lot of work to go down a rabbit hole to realize we can't do it. And the reason why I say that is, if that were possible, we'd see that all the time.
Yeah.
If that were possible, Plainville, who tried 2 overrides recently, both failed, we would see that information out everywhere. You're in education, we would all know, oh, that's how you do it. We just say, like, Community Preservation Act is a great example. In the statute, and y'all did this, you basically said 100,000 is gonna come off for every property. Those are allowed in statute as local options. I would just encourage everybody to not think that that's possible, because I wonder if people just get hopeful for something that probably is not likely to be in the positive.
So, thank you for that information. I think it's important for, in particular, the 9 of us, and maybe those in the audience and those listening that are, particularly the One Franklin folks who are doing a lot of wonderful advocacy. I think it's an important talking point to just be able to say, when that question comes up, that, that there's some further research needed, is what I'm hearing you say, because it doesn't sound like the answer should be that that's a possibility.
I would say the answer is no, until further advised based on research that it's plausible. I would just not even entertain it. That's just my professional opinion, because I think that's clearer to people.
Yep.
Because again, if this was possible, widespread across Massachusetts, I guarantee you this would have happened in tons of towns already. And we'd know how to do it. It would be obvious. And it's just not there. So I don't believe it's possible, and I would be clear with people. If someday that was possible, well, that'd be a victory.
I think if it was, we'd already
We'd know
be seeing guidelines to do it.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification.
Thank you, Councilor Cormier-Ledger. Any other councilors? Councilor DeLarco?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, you kind of, Ted kind of brought up my question, because it's all well and good, and obviously we know it's a need, but, I'm scared for my seniors. You know what I mean? We're gonna hit them 4 or 5 times coming up. We're gonna hit them with Tri-County, stormwater we just hit them with, the interceptor we came up with. It's, I don't want to push seniors out of Franklin, you know what I mean? That's very, it's scary for the 9 of us, because we do represent them. I was hoping there was, like you said, there was like a little break we could give the seniors and stuff like that, people in need. Jamie, when we did the road one, what year was that?
14.
14, was it that long ago?
2014.
Wow, I can't believe that.
Eight, was it 8, the number?
It was 1.5 million.
Yeah, 1.5.
1.5 million, and it feel terrible, right?
It was like 58, 42, somewhere around there against, yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm just, somebody that's going into retirement, myself, I'm scared. I'll be honest with you, I'm scared. But if it's a need, it's a need.
Any other counselors? Anyone in the audience? Please come forward. Max is on a mission tonight.
Got a nice shirt. My name is Maxwell Smart. So. I live on 127 Central Park Terrace, Franklin, Massachusetts. So I was actually a little bit confused, because every December, in the past 2 Decembers, and December after that, you had in front of you a property tax exemption that you could have voted on to give everyone a blanket exemption and make property taxes more progressive, help people who are poor. I don't understand why that can't be coupled with an override. If you vote for that in December, say, hey, we're going to give poor people a tax break, and then say, hey, maybe we could raise the tax levy after that, or you could even put it on the ballot. We could, as a committee, I don't know if you could put it on the ballot with an override, because you have it in December you're voting on anyway, and a lot of the things that you vote on can be put on the ballot, I think. So I don't really see why that can't be done, because you do it every December and you vote it down. And I'm like, what's going on? So, I hope you can reconsider it when it comes up for a vote this December. And if it is something you're interested in doing and helping some people out who do need the relief. And I would add that sort of helping people need health education, because people who, the biggest predictor of MCAS scores is actually the percentage of people in a school who are low income, as well as crime. We talk about Franklin being the safest town. Help people who are low income, you have less crime. So I really think that going forward, you should consider coupling that with an override, or at least voting on it separately if you have to vote on it separately. So thank you.
Thank you. Jamie?
Really quickly, so to Max's point, when the tax rate hearing, I just want to make sure, Max's values, I think, are shared by a lot of people,
Right.
including myself, right? If there were ways that we could try to shift it a little bit to give people help, and I just want to illustrate, number one, that's a Board of Assessors project. And I can assure you, and I know that there'll be some people who will not like this answer, a project of shifting tax burden, I'm sorry, is just as difficult and hard as an override. It is not as simple as just raising your hand up and down. The impact downriver, well, it is, you could just say yes or no. But the downriver impact that people have on that is substantial. And people really need to understand that whatever that shift is, this is the same thing as a single tax rate versus a dual tax rate. We had a great question here at the last meeting. Why don't we just have a dual tax rate and just raise more money off businesses? That's not how that works. It does not bring in any new revenue. I'm not against shifting a burden, from lower income people to higher. I just think the Board of Assessors need to lead an omnibus study to make sure everybody in Franklin knows how that shift happens. I'm sorry, I wish I could say that it was as easy as it's portrayed. It is not. And once you make that decision, just like we've had with the single and dual tax rate every year, if people are up in arms, to go backward is even more difficult. So when you make that decision, and I know Brookline made it, I think they played some of this recently, over the last several years, they've tried to analyze this. Brookline also happened to be, as Mark referenced earlier, the town that referentially just had a story where they broke the Office of Campaign and Finance laws. So I don't know, maybe there's a coincidence there, but the Board of Assessors has to get engaged in this issue, and they have to be consulted, and my guess is the principal assessor and the board would say you need to really go out and make sure you know the full impact throughout the community on that shift.
Thank you, Jamie. No, in the back. Ruth Ann.
All right, so I took a lot of notes, and so I had just a couple of follow-up questions. I'm glad you clarified the email thing, because I was gonna just ask if there was a workaround, whether you can offer up your personal email to somebody to say, if you wanna have a further discussion. I think it's Cambridge that just passed the progressive tax, like the first 200,000 gets skipped, and then it's like after, but one thing I wanted to mention while Nancy's here, most people know now that I'm running this override committee, and then I just pulled paper for school committee, to run for school committee. So I wanted to make sure that I sort of headed this off, and we have called the Office of Campaign Finance and verified, and Nancy called the Office of Campaign Finance and verified. There is no conflict at all. So I just wanted to
You need to
say
check with
that.
the Ethics Commission as well.
Okay, we'll check with them as well, but all the feedback I've gotten was if you were running a PAC, no, and ballot question committee, yes. So that was the differential.
Okay.
But I will check, because I will, give up one or the other, I want to be clear, I think we talked a lot about what people can't do, and I've noticed just being out and about and advocating for this that there's people that are gun shy, especially, the municipal local employees that maybe don't feel they have the OCPF as a resource. I call the OCPF probably every day, and I'm on like a first name basis with Jason over there, and where just to make sure that everything is above board. I don't want to make the same mistakes like Brookline did. So I think that don't feel like you're calling like the DMV or something and you're gonna be in like a queue. It's not as bad lately, I've noticed, to get a response or like an email response. It's usually like within the same day. Teachers especially get very gun shy about this. I had a teacher ask me if it was okay for her to put a One Franklin magnet on her car. That's her private property. She lives in town. She's still a resident. So as long as you're not in the school handing them out to the parents as they pick up the kids, you can certainly drive around town. And when you get out of school, if you want to knock on doors and give information out, you can do all of that. You can be very pro-override. So I just want to make a point of some of the things you can do, because I think people are very nervous about disrupting the process, but there are people who really, especially the teachers, we went to bat for them this year, so, they want to show up and make sure that all the departments aren't suffering because of, having to fund the schools too. So yeah, so that's all I really have right now, so thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Tom?
Thank you, Ruth Ann.
Thank
Jamie,
you.
go ahead.
Ruth Ann brings up a great point, right? And this is just kind of almost political science 102, 201. Employees on their own personal time on weekends can go hold signs at the Village Mall. They can hand out stickers, they can go to meetings, they can advocate, they can cheer, a whole variety of traditional political, activities. We're living in a different world. I don't think Instagram and X, Twitter, formerly known as the artist formerly known as Prince, all these different things didn't exist 10 years ago. And I think everyone is a little gun shy. I think that will loosen up as education happens, which was the point of tonight's meeting. Ruth Ann is totally right, municipal employees. There's also today, a lot of employees don't feel like they want to get in the middle of things, or they just want to do their job. And so there's just now dozens and hundreds of varying opinions. And I think Mark pointed out something that's valid. And Ruth Ann, you've done a great job getting up to speed. I asked you to become an expert in this, and you were on your way if you're not already there. And I mean that, like, you've done an amazing job in the last few months of becoming knowledgeable on these things. People are just going to slowly but surely warm up to what they can do. And some people may stay restrained. And I think in today's kind of more conservative field, what the point is you don't want to make the unforced error. and that's what happened in Brookline. I don't think there's any malicious intent anywhere on that. That's just a slow it down, and they just made an error because everyone's in a rush. And I think I'm hopeful as these sessions go on and more community conversations happen, people will understand and maybe feel comfort level among themselves about what they can and cannot do. And of course, the veteran members of our staff probably know these rules really well, being through these things, being part of the MTA or the union environment, from their associations as well. And I encourage everybody to go through their own associations like the MTA, PFFM. All those organizations provide resources, as you probably know, to give guidance on these things as well. So, thank you.
I can also kind of just add, the one caveat to what I said, outside of your own hours, if you are a municipal paid employee, fundraising is the big no. So don't solicit money, don't be asking for money, don't be selling things, like none of that, but like advocacy in your own time, that's right. That seems to be like
no one likes fundraising anyway, so so nobody's going to step up and call banks people to call banks. So
It's a tough ask. Jane? Yeah.
Just making sure there's no.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Jane Calloway Tripp, 607 Maple Street. A couple quick things. For a lot of people don't know, and I'm gonna pick random numbers because I'm tired and I don't wanna do math.
Okay.
Okay? If we had an override and it passed, we'll use the numbers you did. $12.50 is what we get right now as our tax rate, and we raise it to 13. What most people aren't aware of is if we're doing an override for school and we do the override and it passes, and just again, because I'm picking really no numbers, the tax increase gives the town an additional $10,000. It only goes to the school for that fiscal year that it's allocated for. After the fiscal year, that money, it can be reallocated wherever the town sees fit.
You could do a special.
So getting an override for the school, they're only getting the money, they're not guaranteed to get that every year going forward, because in the past, they never have.
It depends on how it's written, I
Exactly.
believe. It depends on how the ballot question
Two
is
and a
written.
half was
That's
amended
correct.
to allow for specialized
Right.
purposes going forward.
Yeah.
So it stays, if it's done under, there's multiple paragraphs under Prop 2.5, and so you have to pick the appropriate one. If there is one where it specifies it's for a particular operating purpose going forward, it stays that way.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, that list that I provided shows why these slides, these suggestions are up there. They may not be legal requirements, but if you look at that list, almost all of those overrides on that list in the last 5 years, really in history, are very targeted. Why? Voters want to know if they're going to go raise their property taxes and they're going to spend $2 million on schools, they're going to want to make sure that money is for schools forever. And quite frankly, I'll just jump out in front of it, that's the right thing to do. If we did roads and it passed, and then 2 years later, people said, well, I raised my taxes for roads, and boy, 2 years later, they just shoved it all over to someplace else, people don't get happy with those things. So I understand your question, Jane. You know, it's a great, great question, but the vast majority, overwhelming majority of overrides are specifically targeted because I think, as Tom keeps on his head, you've been in those rooms, right?
Yes,
Do
I
people want to know what you're spending the money on, Chair Mercer?
Yes, they do. And you best spend it there.
And you best spend it there, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing, as far as like Councilor Delaco said, be scared that you're retiring. I'm on disability because of the cervical spine issues. My husband is retired. The taxes have gone up. The water has gone up. Utilities, not your fault, have gone up. Groceries, again, not your fault, have gone up. The cost of living has increased at such a rapid rate since 2020. I know 5 families personally that have left. They can't make it. And I've had to contemplate whether or not I was gonna sell my family home, because if everything keeps going up, I'm going to sink. We can't afford it. The schools may need the money, and I have nothing against the schools. I have a granddaughter in them. But people can't afford it, and that is gonna be the biggest problem. Because the other thing is, when you raise that, we'll just say from $12.50 to $13, the next time they go to do the excess, they start at that 13, and now we're even higher. Where the next time they go to the assess, right now we're at $12.50, so maybe when the gods of the government decide we're gonna raise everybody, we go to 13, but we start at 13, now we're at $13.50. My taxes can't keep going up. My water bill, the utilities, I can't. Fixed income, my fixed income doesn't keep getting increased. And I don't have the ability to go get a job because of the disability and because of my personal situations. And there's a lot of people that are in those exactly the way I am right now. So when you put that question or vote to put that, think seriously. I know the schools need their money for whatever their justifications are. But as a whole, I don't think the majority of the people in the town can handle the increases. So just really consider it.
Thank you, Jane. Sure, Ruth Ann.
I just want to reiterate that when we're trying to, One Franklin is trying to put this together for the whole town. We just saw the DPW presentation, and I just want to make sure that it doesn't get just divisive in town. We really know that the schools really have tried to say, yes, we need money. Yes, we're getting desperate, but to see the other departments sacrifice for the schools is not what we're hoping for either. So I just want to say that. And I also I didn't want this, I knew this wasn't going to be a debate about the override. There's plenty of time to be talking about that. But I just don't want to leave with an air of be scared. I also, I want to talk about a number that I spoke with Sue Dusnap about, and just to throw like a random number out, let's say the number was $5 million, and the median home price in Franklin is $580. That would be roughly $300 a year
No.
for people?
No.
That we come up with?
You know this too really well. Two things.
Yeah.
Everyone
We
has
don't
to be
wanna-
very.
We're gonna
clear.
have a calculator on
Yeah,
the
we have to be
website.
very,
That's
very
gonna give you-
cautious
Yeah.
on throwing numbers
very
around.
Every-
Um,
yeah, okay.
But I will tell you, I know from my own just from the discussions about Tri-County
Yeah.
and where they're at, within the last 10 yards, that number's way off. For a $5 million override, that number's way off. In
so-
terms of the actual household impact,
Off which way?
With Tri-County,
Too low.
was it,
Okay.
yeah.
Too low.
Yeah,
was
too low.
Tri-County $26 per 100,000? That's what Jen D'Angelo had told me, so I
So-
was kind of working off that, if it was 2.5 million and whatever.
Right, so Tri-County's a little different, only because they'll be borrowing for the length of the project, and then you get an assessment price based on your population that's there. It's split up, with prorated.
Prorated.
And so, and even them, they've been trying to keep the numbers light, because they want to wait for MSBA and whatever, but I know that number that you
Is
just
low.
presented is definitely low.
I
So
thought it was
just
around
want to be very
7,
cautious.
But I just want to know, everyone to know that when and if we get to a number, there will be a calculator. You will know specifically before you vote what will impact you personally.
She's 100% right about that.
Without question,
Without
they
Right.
will. And I think we may be just getting a little bit ahead of where we need to be at this point. Because what tonight was all about was to provide the council as well as the community with some of the do's and don'ts that we can or can't do as elected officials, as town employees. This conversation will continue. There will be more questions, and there will be many more meetings before we get to the point where we're talking about a specific override. If and when we come to that point, right now, we're just looking at, the schools are looking out for the next 3 to 5 years. Town administration's looking out the next 3 to 5 years. They're gonna come back with some wants or needs, I should say needs rather than wants, from the schools as well as the town, DPW, police, fire, all of those. And then it's going to be up to the council to look at all those things. And, we all know we're never gonna be able to afford them all. So we're gonna then have the very difficult decision of deciding what a good number is. What is that number? And how is it allocated? And what is for all intents and purposes, a passable number?
Right.
A number that the 9 of us feel is passable. Because ultimately, that decision falls on this body. So, but we're a ways away from that yet. What we're trying to do is provide as much information as we possibly can. What I was looking to get out of tonight was, what we can do as elected officials, what we
Right.
can't do. I think it's very important for us to know that we can go out there, we can provide information for these people. We can tell the different groups what's going on, what our needs are, whether it's the school needs or whether it's the town part of government needs. We can go out and do that. There are some more restrictions for paid employees, and wanted to get some of that information out there. So this is, again, the beginning stages. We had what I felt was a very strong opening joint budget subcommittee meeting where there were a lot, as Jamie alluded to early on, there were a lot of people in the room. There were a lot of good questions. There was a lot of good information brought forward. And I think to a degree, there was a lot of eye-opening information for people. That was the first step. This is the second step. we will continue to forge forward because, as everyone knows, inflation's going this way. And we can only increase taxes 2.5%. And inflation 6%, 8% a year. If the town is comfortable, and I think this is the ultimate question for the community, when that time comes, will be, are you happy with the level of services being provided by police and fire, by schools? And if you are, this is a cost associated with it. If not, then there'd be reductions. So, again, getting ahead of ourselves, but we're starting the process, and we will continue to move forward and forge ahead because we need to know what the next 3 to 5 years are going to look like. And the community needs to know that. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Rob Bacher, 17 Russell Street. I'm a proud educator here in Franklin. I want to thank you for all the support. And I just want to reiterate something that Ruth Ann said. As an educator here in Franklin, I do not want, nor do I expect other departments to sacrifice for me. We are all in this together. And we need to go forward, as you just said, together. I would also say, let's not be scared. Let's be bold and creative. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I ended that joint budget subcommittee with the same phrase that I think we will all use as we move forward. We are one Franklin. We need to look at this together as an entire community, and that's how we move forward. So, Jamie, was this somebody?
There was one hand up by Selena, but she just, she clapped.
Oh.
Thank you, Eagle Eyes. Obviously, my eyesight's
Boy,
declining.
those are certainly young eyes. What TV screen?
She was clapping for Rob, so.
Thank you, Selena.
Okay.
I just thought Rob was well-spoken, that's all.
Thank you,
As always,
Selena.
yeah.
Okay. Is there any other question or comment from counselors, people in the council chambers, or people out there in Zoom? Okay, thank you, one and all. Thank you for coming out, sitting through a lengthy meeting. I'm sure you learned an awful lot about the DPW that maybe you didn't know, but we thank you for being here and sitting through the presentations. Moving forward, legislation for action, we have one last piece. Resolution 23-48, appropriation of $35,000 from statewide opioid settlement fund. Clerk will read the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair, the Town of Franklin, Resolution 23-48, appropriation, statewide opioid settlement fund, total requested $35,000. The purpose to transfer and appropriate from the statewide opioid settlement fund in the amount of $35,000 to pay for a one-year contract with Interface Referral Service beginning on July 1st, 2023, and terminating on June 30th, 2024. Motion, be it moved and voted by the Town Council of the Town of Franklin that the sum of $35,000 be transferred and appropriated as indicated above from the statewide opioid settlement fund for the stated purpose. This resolution shall become effective according to the provisions of the Town of Franklin Home Rule Charter.
Move resolution 28-48.
Motion and a second. Discussion, Jamie?
Through Mr. Chairman, so just so everybody knows, this is a required 2/3 vote because it's a stabilization fund transfer. As I mentioned during the budget hearing, we continue to work through the year to try to find creative and, maybe not as bold as Rob was thinking, but just some sort of outside the box thinking of ways to increase the school's bottom line. So this is an eligible expense. It's for 1 year. And the William James Institute has been embedded in the school department for mental health services for a long time. It's always been available to the community. But as the superintendent and I've talked about, if it's in the school budget, it's hard for the community to sometimes see that, right? And so this is an eligible expense, ultimately saves $35,000 off their bottom line from their expense budget, which should save some resources for the schools. And, you know there are some in the community that have been happy with the service. There are some that have not been happy with the service. And I know that our staff is looking forward to, including Callie at the police department and some of the other social service coordinators for the town, are curious about if there was a service that was available to the community and was promoted a little bit more, would more people take advantage of it? And so this was, to me and us, just kind of low-hanging fruit and working with the superintendent to try to do kind of a win-win, if you will. And it has no tax impact because it's opioid settlement money. So, I'd be remiss if I didn't say at some point in the fall, I'm going to gather together the department heads that deal with social service, as well as like maybe 7 or 8 of the other biggest stakeholders that deal with human services in town, to try to get a group together to try to really do a better job coordinating the community's response to human service related issues. There is a lot of duplicity. There is a lack of connectivity. And I'm going to get that group together and just see what their thoughts are. And this is just one part of it. So, everything takes a little while, as you said, Mr. Chairman, it's a process, but at least tonight we'll be able to save them $35,000 going into the school year. Thank you.
We love no tax impact.
I want to say that as much as possible. I don't get to say it much.
We want you to as well.
I know.
Questions and comments?
Max?
No counselors. Max, you have it's Max's night.
It's on fire today.
I'm not overstaying my welcome. My name is Maximo Marangelo. I live at 127 Central Park Terrace. I've actually used Interface. I actually didn't end up using who they selected for me, but they are a very good service, and I just wanted to say that more people should go and use them if they're looking for someone in the mental health field. They have a lot of they're really able to connect, and the insurance, Mass Health is like completely useless when it's trying to find people, so they're a really good resource. So I highly recommend, no matter your insurance, to check them out. Thank you.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you, Max.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, the vote will come on the motion to approve Resolution 23-48. A 2/3 majority is required. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
8-0.
Thank you. Okay, Town Administrator's report.
Rain, rain, go away, coming back some other day. I'm just sick of the rain. All set,
Aren't we-
Mr. Chairman.
Aren't we all? Okay, subcommittee reports. Capital, I don't believe you have
We
met.
haven't met.
EDC, you have met. Councilor Hamblin,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the EDC.
talking about snow.
The EDC met, tonight to discuss, Brutus actually came in and he's worked up a sidewalk map for us to talk about what we've talked about this multiple times at the council level. It's one of our goals. Should we enforce a sidewalk cleaning with snow cleaning sidewalk by law? And so we talked about it a little bit. We'll talk about it again. The town administrator is going to add some more streets possibly to it, and different areas where we saw that map where a lot of people walk, and that's the real important parts of the town that need to be kept clean. And I think that was it. That was it.
Thank you. Let's see.
Master plan.
Master Plan Committee, do you want to give an update?
Sure.
Councilor Frangillo?
Yeah, thank you. So the master plan has been meeting. We've now started our subcommittee meetings, where each subcommittee is really doing deep dives into a whole bunch of different areas. All of this is on the master plan website, but there's going to be a whole bunch of meetings for the next year and a half. So keep up to date with what you're interested in, and more information will be coming out. The next full master plan meeting is next Wednesday, August 23rd. Time at 7.
Great.
6:30.
Okay, perfect. Let's see, Budget Subcommittee, we had a joint Budget Subcommittee meeting, and it was very, very well attended. We talked about many different things, mostly getting the first conversations about the process for an override, and what the next 3 to 5 years lookout might be. And we asked the administrations, and I know in the town part of the government, we've a little further along maybe than the school part of the government is, because in fact they're dealing with new superintendent, new business manager now, so it's going to take a little bit more time for them to get that 3 to 5 year plan done. Then our hope is to bring the group, the Joint Budget Subcommittee, back together again, talk more about the process. We're going to meet again in, I think it was late September, early October, and then they won't have the plan done by then, I'm sure. But we'll at least continue the process and continue the discussion, looking out 3 to 5 years as to what the needs are for the entire community, because that's what we're going to be dealing with. And I applaud everybody that came to the joint budget. The council chambers was full. There wasn't a seat anywhere. The Zoom, we had 2 pages of Zoom. So it was just a great informational meeting. I wish we could get that kind of attendance at all of our meetings, but I do understand that. But I think it's important as we proceed with these discussions with the Joint Budget Subcommittee that we get as many people to come to those meetings and to help spread the word to the community what the needs are and what the needs might be as we look out 3 to 5 years. Because they're, as you saw from the DPW tonight, some of those numbers are daunting, for sure. So anyway, that's what's going on with the Joint Budget Subcommittee. GATRA, Councilor Frangillo?
Yeah, GATRA didn't meet, but in lieu of meeting, they did another administrator report. I'd say the big things to note, the state budget increased RTA, Regional Transit Authority funding a good amount. We don't know how much GATRA is going to get of that yet, or what we can use it for, but that's exciting, so that'll be increase and improved services. And then one of my requests is happening, which was doing calculations of how much it costs per mile to run all the different services that they run, and how much we make per mile. They didn't have that number before, and they're going to do that now.
It's called mean miles. Mean miles.
Called Kobe, keeping them on their toes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Frangillo. Davis, their reuse committee, I know they met. Councilor Pellegrini.
We met this week, and we didn't have the crowds that you had, but we had, I'd say, a good 20 people that was in the audience. And we had some very good ideas from people on our committee as to the uses for the school. Certainly nothing was decided upon, but we're going to have another meeting and invite some of the people from some of the committees in that were mentioned to do something with the school. So I think it was a very good meeting that way. And Jamie is going to get in touch with those people. Where are you? There you are, over there.
Musical chairs.
Yeah, is going to get in touch with them. For a second meeting, I think that we're moving right along, and we're planning to have the open house, and it may not be for a little while yet, but the ideas were good that came up. It was a good meeting.
Thank you, Councilor Pellegrini. I think it was as well. I was able to sit in. So, let's see, last one, Police Station Building Committee, our first meeting is next week. So, we'll report at the next council meeting. Okay, moving on, future agenda items. Councilor Cormier Ledger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just since he was here tonight, I think we should take President Elmore up on his offer to give us a dean update.
He was already on the agenda.
Perfect.
It was too late to get him on to tonight, so we asked him if he wanted to come and just speak under citizens' comments, and then we put him on the agenda for September 6th. So
Fantastic.
he's already on the agenda. Councilor Chandler.
Nothing at this time.
Councilor Pellegrini.
Nothing at this time.
Councilor Sheridan.
Nothing else?
Councilor Frangillo. Councilor
Well, no, actually, nothing at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Nothing at
Councilor
this time.
DeLarco.
Nothing.
Okay, councilor comments. Councilor Sheridan.
Yeah, I got a big one. So my neighbors, Tyler and Stephanie Izzy, you met them, and they're very happy with the playground. And the incoming second graders at their school, I believe Oak Street, is having a fundraiser on the Common from 11 to 1 on Sunday. And they're doing it to raise money for the Pitt Hopkins Foundation. And it was the kids' idea, so I'm going to encourage everybody to go if they can. You have to get by some lemonade.
Thank you, Councilor Sheridan. Councilor Frangillo?
Office hours tomorrow, Senior Center, tomorrow morning, 8:30. You got a chance to get down to the farmer's market. They're a blast. There's music. There's a ton of people. It gets bigger every time. I'll save the exciting one about this week to Councilor Hamlin.
I was like, you're gonna take
it was, farmer's market into music, into a movie. It was just a great day. Every year, this is my third year in a row working with the downtown businesses to put up a story walk in their windows. And so for the next few weeks, there's a story about doing your part to help the planet. And you can walk down Main Street, look in all the shops, and read that story.
Where does it start?
Starts at FSPA and goes all the way to Franklin Nutrition, so along Main Street. There's also going to be a story walk popping up on the rail trail in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Councilor Frangillo. Councilor Cormier Ledger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few things. Jamie, can you look into the concerns tonight brought up by Mrs. Tripp on Maple Street, please?
Yep.
Thank you. One of the other comments that was brought up, we do final water readings and we do final water inspections for home of a certain age. So I wonder if we can ask Brutus and his team, when they do that, maybe they could check water pressure, just as before the home changes hands to another owner. If it's a simple enough thing, when I've gone to final water readings and final water inspections, they're on site to tell the homeowner the things that need to happen to the home for it to change hands anyway. So perhaps if that is an issue in older homes, that could just be added to their checklist and alleviate some of the concerns raised tonight.
Okay.
And I would just, on a great note, I want to thank Jen Levine from the Safe Coalition. She came and spoke at a meeting I was at Monday, brought to light a lot of great programs that they're doing, not just for those suffering from substance abuse, but people suffering at all levels. And she was very excited to tell us that they got a $40,000 grant to be able to help LGBT youth in particular in town that are struggling with depression that could lead to substance abuse and other challenges. So they're really trying to head things off before they become a problem, and I just want to commend her and her team for all the great work they're doing.
Thank you, Councilor Cormier Ledger. Councilor Chandler.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank Franklin for still showing up, bringing people And it was good to hear the other side tonight, too. I like both sides. It's good to hear everything, you know, for the people at home. I did get one email, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Jamie. At the high school, those 6 brand-new vehicle chargers, did we pay for that? And if so, do we make money off of that?
No.
Okay.
Those are, I'd have to double check whether it was grant money through DOER or whether it was from some of the net metering credits through National Grid. But like the ones back here, we can't, we can't charge for them.
Yeah.
There's different regulations with the funding source, and when they come from utility companies, we can't do that. And I don't think that was the intention of why they were put up there. But I'll double check in terms of whether it was National Grid that paid for them, or whether for the net, it's from the solar farm net metering credits.
I think the gist of the email was that,
Oh.
did it come out of the school budget? You're saying.
Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that was the
Sorry,
gist
no,
of the
it did
email.
not come out of the school budget.
Okay, great.
They would not pay for that stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Chandler. Councilor Pellegrini.
No, I don't have anything for tonight.
Councilor Hamblin. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for stepping in at the last minute to fill in as clerk for the night.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. I hope I did a good enough job.
You absolutely did.
Okay.
We'll all let Glenn know.
All these things have already been said. Office hours Friday at the farmer's market. We will have our annual zucchini races, and it's really a blast. Everyone should show up and bring a zucchini car. Think of Pinewood Derby. There's like voting, and then it's just really a blast. So the AgCom, thank you to the Agricultural Commission for putting this on. It's really a lot of fun. The information about what the Safe Coalition is doing, Councilor, sorry, Cormier Ledger, that's like amazing what they do, but also there's a opioid overdose awareness event coming up on the 31st. Maybe Councilor DeLorco knows more about that, at what time. And that is all.
Thank you, Councilor Hamblin. Councilor DeLorco.
Thanks. A couple things. Yeah, we do have that on August 31st. Yeah, we have that every year. We'll probably be up at the Common. We usually put the flags up at the Common too. So, Jamie, a couple of things. Can you just check in? I forgot to ask Brutus tonight. 2 people on 48 King Street and who's ever next door, 50?
Yeah.
Donna.
Yeah,
Is it
Donna. Yeah.
They got a manhole in front. It's either a manhole or a sewer hole, and the tractor trailers come down in the middle of the night. It's loose, so they hit it, and it bangs, and it wakes them up at night. I meant to call Brutus, but I forgot. But when he mentioned it tonight, I said, "Oh, I forgot. I gotta mention it." You know what I mean? So if you could please, thank you. I appreciate that. A couple of things with Safe Coalition. Obviously, we do a lot with mental illness now. We do a lot of different things. We have grown a lot in 5 years. I just want people to know that we are doing a great job, but we're going up 1 step and coming down 3. I'm gonna be honest with you. I did a tour today. I did a tour in Pennsylvania this summer, and I did a tour at Mass and Cash this week. It's really, really bad. I walked around Mass and Cash, and there were 4 people with needles in their arm in the middle of the day, just walking around like they had nothing, and they still had the rubber band wrapped around their arm. And that place is better than Philly. I mean, it's really, really bad. And I mean, we're doing everything we can, but just so you know, I think people think that it's going away a little bit. It really is not going away. It's bad. And a lot of it does come into mental illness. You know, I don't know if we're giving too much pressure on the kids. I don't know what we're doing, you know. Whatever we're doing, we have to revamp it because
Do something different.
we have to do something different because we have come a long way, but like I say, we're going up 1 step and coming down 3. So if you know somebody that's struggling with addiction, please, reach out to them, get us into the Save Coalition and stuff, because I was shocked. I really was. I was shocked.
Thank you, Councilor DeLarco. Probably my most important comment of the evening is happy 39th birthday to Councilor Pellegrini.
You're almost over the hill.
Almost.
Catching up to Kobe.
Got a long ways to go.
But I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. I know there were a lot of school people here this evening. Very much appreciate them being here and taking part and getting information that we need to get out to all of the community, not just the elected officials, not just the employees, but to the entire town. So, you know, these next few years are going to be difficult years. We know they are, and the better and the more planning we can do, the better off we're going to be. So please get involved. If you have any questions, there's many people here that you can call and be more than happy to help and direct you in the right direction if they don't have the answers. But please get involved. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Non-debatable. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?